off-street parking, proposed amendments, have that pros and cons, and then move on. And then last, the proposed hawkers, peddlers, mobile food establishment, and door-to-door salesperson, and open and close that. The last two we would not be voting on tonight, but the first one we may or we may not. Okay? That being said, Mr. Antonellis, I see you are on, and I see Mr. Renzi is on. So would either of you like to discuss the proposed solar ordinance and changes that have been brought forth?
Anthony, if you like, I can kind of just give the council an overview of the changes, unless you'd like to.
Go right ahead, Michael.
Okay. So you should have been sent a memorandum that was from the previous planner, Jennifer Siciliano. That was dated back in March 9th. And so she had some recommendations to add with the proposed language that was attached to that. Does everybody have that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, well, I guess I'll get to Jennifer's comments after I just kind of give a brief summation of what the new proposal is. And this is going to be very brief. It's a very lengthy, detailed ordinance that you have to read through. So I'll kind of give a brief overview. If you want to get into the details, we can stop and read through it if you'd like. So the new ordinance as it's proposed, what it does is it breaks up solar farms, solar proposals into three different categories: a minor, a medium, and a major. A minor project or solar project is anything under 1,750 square feet. That can be permitted by right if it is underneath that threshold. If it's under that threshold and under, that's permitted by right. And I think the height requirement is 12 feet for the panels. For a medium, that is anything over 1,750 square feet. And for the major, that is anything, or I should back up actually. The minor is under 1,750 and serves the lot that it is on. The medium is over 1,750 and serves the lot that it is on. The major is anything over 1,750 and is sold, does not serve the lot that it is on, and cannot exceed a maximum of 40 acres. And so with the minor, that is allowed in all zones so long as that meets all other zoning requirements, that's setbacks as they are standard. For the medium, that requires site plan approval through planning board. It also requires a special use permit through the zoning board of review. That also comes with 100-foot setbacks for the solar panels. Solar panels also being limited to 12 feet high. And that is the case in all zones. For the major, that is all the same requirements as for the medium, and with a whole lot of litany of other things that are required with that as well. So with the medium, that requires site plan review, and that's standard site plan review under the commercial site plan review currently in the ordinance. With the major, same thing, site plan review through the planning board under the requirements of commercial and manufacturing or industrial site plan review. That also requires special use permit through zoning board of review. It requires design standards, a copy of the lease of the land to be placed on file with the town clerk's office. It requires a bond for decommissioning, landscaping plan, a performance bond for the landscaping. Removal of topsoil is not allowed. Clearing is limited to the areas necessary for construction. Emergency access is required. No signage is allowed other than the signage that is specific to like informational purposes. And we can get into details on that if you want. Operation and maintenance plan is required. And anything over 40,000 square feet requires environmental impact analysis of what is being proposed there. So that's a really brief overview of what you have. As you see, it's really detailed. So Joanna, Anthony, if you want to fill in the gaps, if you think I missed anything deserves to be highlighted more than it was through the chair, go ahead and jump in.
I think just one thing that the planning board and I think some residents were very concerned about is the decommissioning bond. We had also authorized a lien to be attached to the property so that we didn't run into the problem that I think somebody had brought up, another town had ran into, that the companies, whoever owned the solar farm had changed and the bond had either lapsed or did not run with the land. So we've enabled it that there is a lien put on title to ensure that this decommissioning bond, which isn't going to come into effect until, 20 years from now, the town still has some teeth to enforce that. So I think that was probably one thing that the planning board worked pretty hard and gone on and on to make sure that the town was protected. And the performance bond for the landscape plan was also something the planning board had initiated at one project and it was a success. So we thought about doing that permanently. But that's really it.
Also, 1 minute, Anthony. Joanna, can you tell me where I see that decommission portion in this?
So
Am I overlooking it?
Nope.
Environmental concerns, is that 15?
Go to E2B.
E2B. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anthony, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Also, part of the decommissioning, we put in there after 6 months, if the land is not being used or has any plans of being used, the landowner has to put a seedling in every hole that they put in there for the solar panels to bring back natural growth after the decommissioning. So every hole that they put in after 6 months, if they're not going to use the land and the land is going to be vacant, that company has to go back out there and put a seedling in every hole to bring back the forestry and kind of bring it back to where it was, or some sort of growth.
Yeah, either they have to have a development plan or they have to plant, and we had included that it had to be a native species.
Correct.
And is that bonded too?
No.
Those plants growing or not? Okay.
No, the only thing that's bonded is the plants that they're guaranteeing in their landscape.
Landscaping. Okay.
Around the perimeters.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. How does this apply to leased land? Is this enforced upon leased land as well?
This applies to any solar installation, whether you own the land or not. So if somebody's going to lease their land for a project, the owner is still bound by these requirements.
Right. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to open it up to the public. Mr. Carey, I see you are on and you had sent us an email. Do you want to address that? Excuse me. Do you want to address that, or do you want us to, we've had the ability to read that? And you are muted.
I just unmuted you.
No, it doesn't look like,
Still muted.
he's still muted from what I can see. Nope,
Thank you.
all set. Joe,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I just had a couple issues. I don't know if you want to just read the email I sent you. If
Sure.
that's better. I don't know how well you can hear me.
Yep. Does somebody want to read the email or do you want me to read it?
I have the email up if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
It says, "Hi Denise, I would hope that you and the town council would consider increasing the 100-foot setback to a minimum of 200 feet. I know that terrain masking was added to the draft ordinance, but I still think we should establish a larger buffer from abutters and the road. Also, you would need to consider reducing the maximum acreage down to 40 acres. The new array on Hartford Pike is approximately 25 acres. It is a total destruction of so much forest, and I would hate to see this trend continue in other areas of our beautiful town. Please consider a 20-acre maximum. That is enough for approximately a I think he corrected this to megawatt facility. I had asked for the town at least, I'd asked for the town at the last public hearing to consider an overlay district for the solar arrays, and the council was interested in exploring this option as it would look at the most appropriate areas of town for these types of facilities. Unfortunately, the planning board did not even discuss this option. I understand it is a time-consuming process, but if you're going to protect the town and its citizens, I think it is well worth it. If you could forward this email to the rest of the town council, town clerk, and the solicitor, I would appreciate it. Thanks, Joe Carey."
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to add? I've lost.
No,
oh,
I just, thank you for, addressing it and listening to my email, and thank you, Mike, for reading it.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question about the overlay districts, and I do recall that at the last public hearing discussing it. Mr. Renzi, was there a reason why I understand it's time consuming, but was there a reason why it wasn't looked at?
It's, you're trying to constrict it to where in one particular area is going to make it difficult. But what I think a lot of people are failing to realize is really Foster doesn't have the infrastructure to handle solar farms like everybody thinks they're going to. Okay, it takes more than just putting the solar panels up. It's what can carry the power to and from the transfer stations. And the farther they have to go, the more money it costs for the people putting up the solar farms to spend, and the return is not considerable. It's not conducive. So really, for us to really get up in arms and start doing that, I think it's a little early, because if the infrastructure was here, you would have them knocking the door down for the amount of land we have to put up solar farms. So that's one of the reasons. And the overlay just really wasn't an issue. It was just, we felt that the solar farms were intrusive to the site and not the result of what it does. The green energy is something that we're not going to stop. That's something that they're going to do. So we felt the biggest problem was the restrictions on what the view is to the public. And if the answer to Mr. Carey making it 20 acres because you don't want to cut down the trees, you can't stop someone from going in and cutting down all the trees he wants on his property anyway. And that's just the way it is. But I wouldn't get too nervous about solar farms coming to Foster at any time soon. Otherwise, they would have.
Well, we do have quite a few already, Mr. Renzi.
We only have 3 major ones. That's all we have. Okay.
Thank you. Before we continue, Mr. Allen, is he on?
Oh boy.
Mr. Allen sent an email also, which you, Mrs. Dillon, forwarded. Is Mr. Allen on?
Going once.
No,
I have Mr. Allen's email. It was sent to me. I don't know if any other council members got it, but Sue sent it on to everyone. I'm writing to ask that you reject the draft solar ordinance and send it back to the planning board. The board has not adequately addressed the issues brought up during the last hearing, In addition, recent information regarding reduced property values around the industrial scale arrays in rural areas provides an added reason not to allow such arrays in the town of Foster. Industrial scale arrays are destructive of the character of our town. Forest is essential to that character, and its destruction endangers all the benefits of forest: carbon sequestration, watershed, protection of our wells, and human and wildlife habitat. For this reason, I ask that you lead an effort for a permanent ban on industrial scale arrays in Foster. Specific to the current draft ordinance, 40-acre limits mean no practical limit to the size of such arrays. A 40-acre array is enormous and enormously destructive to our forest and character of community. Even a 20-acre limit is enormous. I suggest that a 5-acre limit be established if we are to have such arrays at all. The proposed 100-foot setback is inadequate to protect the surrounding forest and abutters. Terrain masking is only a cosmetic addressing of the unsightliness of large arrays. The fundamental matter is the destruction that the array represents. A significant reason for a substantial setback is that industrial scale arrays produce a heat island effect. The air over the array can heat up to approximately 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Consider this long-term heat properties impact on surrounding forests and on abutters. The immediate climate at and surrounding the site will be altered. The forest will be endangered. The threat of forest fires may be enhanced. Then there is the health issue pertaining to abutters from this heat island effect. Even a 200-foot setback may not be adequate. The fact is that industrial scale solar does not belong in a town like Foster. Non-native species should not be used to mask the array. Only native species should be used. Also specific to the current draft ordinance is vague, unenforceable language. For example, under 5, landscaping plan, E, the landscaping plan should show minimal regarding and limit removal of existing materials, including topsoil. Such language is non-specific and wholly unenforceable. This is another reason that the draft should be returned to the board. There is the potential for long-term leaching from the panels into the soil and watershed. Hazardous materials in the panels may be released as the panels degrade over time. This, like the above information, is in the literature and should not be ignored or denied. Finally, and most important, is the destructive impact of industrial scale solar on surrounding property values. A recent URI study established that according to the Providence Journal, prices of homes within a mile of solar installation declined by 1.7%. Homes within a tenth of the mile went down by 7%. Some of the largest impacts were in suburban communities when a solar project was built on a farm or forested property. In those instances, housing prices within a mile of the array dropped by 5%. Please show your leadership by working to bring about a permanent ban on industrial scale solar, protect our community's character, health, and quality of life from these damaging arrays that destroy the most fundamentally important climate change mitigation force, our forests. The reasons I provide above, please return the draft solar ordinance to the planning board. Thank you, Paul Allen. That being said, is there, Mrs. Ryder, you had your hand raised. Do you want?
I want to comment. I did see under definitions, terrain masking, and then I found them again in the setbacks. But it would seem and in where it says the setbacks, there's just one of 3 tools. But where that particular tool is demonstrated on Route 101 is so incredibly effective, I would hope that that would be the preferred, way to hide it rather than the bushes and whatever. And if that cannot be accomplished, then I think that increasing 150, 200-foot buffer would be better. You are going to get people who are going to put them in a flat field. I know, and I assume it's still the same, if you go to Patchett and as you're leaving town heading north, there is a solar array in a field, but it is set far back. When you are on the road, that is not the first thing you see. Okay, it's far enough back. It isn't disguised by anything. It probably should be, but it isn't. But again, because it's so far back, it is not what you focus on. So I mean, I would like to see that the terrain masking, because, you know, if you give a developer the 3 choices, and the most difficult one is terrain masking, but it is the most effective, they're not going to choose that. But I think in the planning stage, if it is feasible, that should be the preferred method. Because again, you know, I think it's difficult to complain about the unsightliness of the solar field on 101. Do I like the fact that so many trees were taken down? No. But if you're doing just a, you know, just visually, it is the least conspicuous of the ones we have in town, and that is due solely to terrain masking.
Thank you. I will accept anybody else in regards to con for this solar ordinance. We've heard from 2 emails. Is there anybody else? Mrs. Jill, oh, Mr. Rogers. Yep,
Hold on.
okay.
How you doing, everybody? I think this is a big improvement over the previous one where we had 30-foot setbacks. I think it addresses a lot of the major problems. One thing I brought up at some of the meetings was, you know, certain businesses in town that have a lot of rooftop that would just to zero net out their electric bill, they would be putting up more than 1,750 square feet. And I used, for example, my neighbor across the street at the chicken farm, who has a 440-foot long building that has talked to me about possibly going solar because of his large electrical bill and agriculture when all the equipment he runs in there. And that would put him, I believe, simply just trying to zero net out, not cutting a single tree, and you're certainly not going to put a fence up to block it. But by putting solar on his roof to help his business out, he would have to go through the hoops. I know it's probably just an informality, but I think roof mounting is a really big push up on a state level because they've heard the cry about the rural communities with the trees being cut and the visual effects that upset so many people. They are putting a big push for roof mount and carport mounts because they want to really push the green energy in the state on a state level. So I think there should be something carved out. If you're at least zero netting out, whether a large building, a large roof area, that it should simply be permitted. You're not asking for any trees to be cut or nothing. Like I said, you can't put a fence up high enough, for example, for him to block that view. The only thing I see that might be somewhat restrictive, because I think you addressed the visual part of it very well with the 100-foot setback and saying it has to be blocked for seasonal. I think you really covered all the problems with that. But I think the 40% shall not exceed 40% of the property size, existing property on coverage. And again, I know in GBM, when you're doing a commercial site, they've got site coverage maxing to 60%. If you're going to pave and put up a building, you can go up to 60%. With the 40% on solar, it's really not that evasive on permeable. With the property, the rainwater still can drain through, where the 60% on paving, it has to be retained and stuff. So I think that's a little hard. I think hard hitting, but overall, I think it's much better than it was before. So I don't know if you want to take that as a pros or cons, or that's all I have as input on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Con? Mrs. Ryder, yes again. Can we wait 1 minute, Mrs. Ryder, see if there's anybody else?
No, go ahead.
No. Okay, Mrs. Ryder.
This is just a question. I know at one point at some meeting in the distant past, there came up the question of lead being leached into the soil.
Mhm.
Is there any definitive
No.
information on that?
Yeah,
Miss-
that, if you want, do you mind me answering that for you?
If you'd wait 1 minute, please. Mrs. Moreau, you had brought that up, that there was a town that was concerned about that, and that was one of the reasons why we sent it back and we delayed voting on it that night. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And what the outcome was?
I haven't heard because right after that meeting, COVID hit and we haven't met since.
Okay.
So I
Now,
have
Mr. Rent.
going on.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Renzi.
Is it okay now?
Yes, that's why I said now, Mr. Renzi.
Okay. That night, that meeting that Mrs. Moreau came in and we backed it up we put a moratorium on it again, tried to explain. Each and every town that doesn't want a solar farm in their town throughout the United States comes up with some sort of whatever. Okay, whether it's lead, 150 degrees or whatever it is. These are being put up. This is pushed on a national level from coast to coast, every state in the world. They've been tested, whatever. All the hazards, believe me, I was the first proponent against them. All the hazards that people have come up with have been tested and taken care of. And there is no lead involved in any seepage into the ground from a solar field or an array. The only question I would have and that's why we put a decommissioning bond in it. They last 25 years. I don't know if the first one has expired yet from when they first started coming out. I don't know if the 25 years has been over, but that would be something to see on how they can get rid of them 25 years down the road. And the problem would be when they decommission it, who's going to take them, where they're going to dump them, and whatever that happens. And that's why we put the performance bond in there, just so somebody doesn't decide, okay, we're done with our 25 years, see you later, and leave it right there in the field in the town. That way we are covered from it. But as far as the hazards, I don't believe there's any. I could be wrong, but I don't believe there's any.
Okay, thank you. Mike, do you have any research on that? Has there been 25 years since one of them has started?
Since any?
And yeah, I'm really putting you on the spot right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. I thought it might be one of those.
He's not
trivia
25
facts that
years
you-
old. He wasn't around then.
Oh, come on.
Okay. Yes, Joanna.
I think, so part of the issue is that we've had several applicants bring us research on particular panels and the research about the ingredient, not the ingredients, but what would happen if it broke. And, you know, obviously the research that they're providing us is likely paid for by the company who has produced these panels. I do think that the panels that are coming out now are significantly different than the panels in your original solar farms. So any prior research probably would not be relevant right now. But we've had research that people have brought in that said they're completely fine. And I believe that there's been some other research presented by abutters that say the complete opposite. So I don't know that there's anything definitive either way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this solar ordinance?
Give me 1 second, please.
Yep.
All set.
All set. There's no one then.
No one.
No one in favor. Okay. Mr. Antonellis, you had spoken earlier about suggestions that Jennifer, the prior, do you want to address those now?
Yeah, I was just basically going to read them, but that was in Jennifer's memo to
Could you speak a little louder?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me well now?
No.
No. You were better before.
Now we don't hear you at all.
Can you hear me at all right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to speak loudly, even though my children are sleeping upstairs.
Do you want me to read them, Michael?
What-
I can read them.
Joanna can read
If you
them.
don't mind. I don't know what's going on with my microphone all of a
Yep,
sudden.
I'll read them. Okay, so Jennifer wanted to add in 2 definitions. One being brownfield, which means a property where a known or suspected release of petroleum and or hazardous materials presents a barrier to the sale, reuse or redevelopment of the site, or where uncertainty on the cost of remediation adversely impacts the value of the property. And I believe her idea.
That's in there.
Yes, that's what, no, Joanne, that's on our letter. That's what Jennifer had recommended. It's not within,
It's not in the actual.
Oh, all right, sorry.
it's in our letter from
And I think
Jennifer.
what Jennifer wanted to do was if there, to encourage development of solar farms on brownfields, because obviously there's not much else that you can do with that. And I believe that she thought it may make sense to lessen some restrictions on those sites, because those sites are kind of eyesores as they are. It's not like we're cutting down forests. The next definition that she wanted to add in was solar land coverage. Means the total footprint of land occupied by all components of a solar installation, but not limited to solar panels, mounting equipment, ancillary components of the installation, inter-row and panel collector spacing, access, and all other area within the required perimeter security fencing. And when you're talking about, so to bring on the definition, we would add into section E, solar land coverage in the AR, NC, GBM, and MI districts. The solar land coverage plus any additional or existing structures on the lot shall not exceed 40% of the land suitable for development of the lot, unless the solar installation is being installed on a brownfield, in which instance there shall be no restrictions on solar land coverage. And then it also says there should be no restrictions on solar land coverage in the M district, and the planning board shall have the authority to require mitigations and maintain aesthetic appeal. So Jennifer did think that we should limit solar farms to 40% of the developable land on any particular parcel, except for a brownfield.
And within the solar ordinance as it is now, it's greater than 40%
It can be, there's no restriction.
restrictions.
There
Okay,
is, there is a restriction, 40 acres. It can't be on a bigger piece than 40 acres.
Right.
The 40%, the 40%, okay, and we discussed this heavily. Okay, what happens with a 40%, allowing it on 40%? I don't know if we have any math teachers on the council. If you look at, when they come in to do a solar farm, it's about money and how much they can, how big of an area they can put in. So this is what we were trying to get across to Joanna, and I don't know if she was a little confused about it. If you only allow them to put it on 40% of the property that they're gonna come in, they just clear a bigger piece of property so that they can get the 40% on. Did you follow what I'm getting at, how I'm getting at this? If you have a 1 acre piece of property, and you can only let them put it on 40%, 40% is not enough to put it on because they're not gonna make their money, so they clear 2 acres so that they can get enough. So what you're doing is you're really allowing them to expand, making it bigger. So if you come in with a 50 acre piece, so the 40 acres, now it becomes almost 80 acres for them to get the amount of solar power that they need, whether it's the way we had it structured. So on a 40 acre parcel, that's the maximum. You can't go beyond that. Plus they need everything around it, not just, you won't have, it'd be, well, like I said, there isn't much room around town to do that in. But by doing the 40% restriction, just allows them to keep making the plot bigger and bigger and bigger so that they get enough space to handle their project.
Thank
How
you.
I'm getting at, I mean, it's confusing, but it kind of, if you,
You made it crystal clear. Thank you.
I will test you on that later.
Okay, thank you. Joanna, since Mike isn't, maybe Mr. Renzi can answer it. For those people on here that are not familiar with AR, NC, GBM, MI, and M, could you give us the wording for that?
Sure. So an AR is an agricultural residential. NC is neighborhood commercial, and we do not have. There are
No.
still, I think there are maybe a couple, but there's not much neighborhood commercial. GBM is general business mixed use, which I believe the majority of Route 6 is zoned GBM. MI is the industrial.
Manufacturing, yeah.
I believe there are only a couple sites that are still zoned MI. There are
Yep.
not many. And M is municipal, which is the area as of right now is just that area around town hall, town hall, the police department, that kind of little square there.
Thank you. And I think the only MI in town is down Windsor, way down at the end towards the state police barracks.
I believe so.
Okay. Oh, we can hear you now.
101.
Yeah, for some reason my mic volume plummeted. I was able
You
to
just
figure it
didn't
out.
want to read it.
Yeah, that was it.
That's it. Gordon, did you have your hand raised? No? Okay. Since there is no one else that wants to say anything pro or con, I'm going to close this public hearing and open it up to the council. Does the council have any questions?
I actually had a question for Mike. What Gordon brought up about the chicken farm, for example, their building is so long, and if they wanted to do solar on the roof, how would that work under this ordinance? I mean, because like you said, no vegetation, you're not going to have a fence, it's going to cover it. So how would we address that? And is that something that we need to include in this ordinance before we approve it?
Yeah, great question. I was actually just messaging Joanna about this because I had kind of the same question, which was how do we address rooftop solar? Rooftop solar is mentioned in this ordinance. I think it was C2.
Yeah.
Yeah, C2. Ground mounted shall not exceed 12 feet in height, and then roof mounted solar installations shall not exceed the maximum height for the applicable zoning district, shall not conflict in shape and proportion with the existing roof, nor extend the footprint of the structure. So it sounds like to me, the way that is worded under minor installations, so long as the installations are 1750 and under and conform to those requirements. Joanna, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it would be by right?
Yes, and then if you were over 1750, but still for
I
that,
see you, Gordon.
it would be under D2, and the restrictions are basically the same, but you would have to go for a site review.
Okay.
Thank you. Cheryl,
Gordon
you
had his
had
hand up.
No, he waved it off. Cheryl, did you have something?
I just want to make sure I understand. They can't go more than 40 acres. But so 40 acres, this is where I get confused with the 40%. You did a good job, Anthony, but I'm still a little lost there. Sorry. They can't go more than 40% either, right? You said that it would, if there was if it was only 1 acre, they could go to another acre, or if they were if they were at 40%, they would go bigger than the area, and they could be up to 80%. So that's where I'm confused, what that means.
Okay, the way it's written now, it limits it to 40 acres. If we were to put a 40% in it, it would change the whole dynamic.
I see, okay.
Because now it ends up being every piece that they want to do, they would end up doubling it so that they can get the amount they need.
Okay, all right, got it.
It still could not be over
40 acres, right.
Okay. I do have another question.
Okay.
If the council decided that they wanted to make the cutback more than 100 feet,
The
or
setback?
the setback, or if
Yep.
they wanted to make the 40 acres less, would this have to go back to the planning board, or do we make that
No.
decision
You
here
could
ourselves?
include that as part of your motion,
Okay, okay.
okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else from the council? I do. I'll wait until Mrs. Moreau is done drinking, because the question's for her. The question's for you, Patty. I didn't want you drinking your water and like, oh, okay. With these solar, and we get tangible tax,
Yes,
how much do we make, like on the one at 101 or the two on Route 6?
it's $5 a kilowatt.
So
Not a lot of money.
it's not a lot of money.
No, for what the panels cost,
Yeah.
it's not a lot of money.
And is that because the state put those restrictions in?
They made that a law, $5 a kilowatt.
So we're losing trees and beautification, if you will, for $5 a kilowatt.
Yes.
Yeah, but you got to understand how many kilowatts, I think, how many kilowatts some of these places are producing. They end up from the kilowatt to a megawatt, okay? And then it
So
starts.
give me an example then, Anthony.
In our
I'll give
town,
you I'll give you an example. The one on 101 and 102.
Yes, thank you.
What was voted on, it was brought to our attention that it would bring in $50,000 in tax revenue. Okay?
It would. It hasn't yet?
You would have to ask the tax assessor, which I believe it ended up less than the $50,000. Okay? The two on Route 6, the smaller one, not much of a revenue. That's not a very big megawatt. That's small. That, I don't know what happened there. I wasn't privy to that board. The first one was at the beginning stages of when things were brought out. And we would have made out well on that one, but that's just when the state came in and capped us.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that one would have been, and that's what made the state come in, because everybody was taxing them crazy like they wanted to. But the bigger the solar farm, the more money you're gonna make,
Right.
okay?
Well, not as much money as we should be getting.
True, which I don't know what should be getting is, but the amount of money we're getting now for anything is zero. Okay?
Well, we're talking solar right now, Mr. Renzi. This isn't a campaign.
And I'm not campaigning, I'm telling you.
I know you're not. I know you're not, Mr. Renzi. I just thought I thought I'd nip it in the bud. Mrs. Hors is on the council and she'd like to speak.
so do we have any figures at all of what we're taking in from these solar farms that we have, the three? Do
We had a chart in our email, I think, a while back. I'm looking for it now.
Ellie's
about
got her hand up.
the potential.
Denise,
I see that, and so does Mr. Donovan. I was recognizing Cheryl first and she was getting an answer, so
Well,
thank you, Chris.
I thought maybe Kelly could answer it.
I just wanted to mention that there's also a change in the real estate value from personal property to commercial. So there's an increase in that, right, Patty?
There's an increase in that, but there's also someone who is trying to
Sue.
sue all the towns to lower that to, well, if it's up to them, we wouldn't be taxing it at all.
But in her original calculation, when Patty estimated the taxes for solar projects, right, Patty, you included that change, personal property to commercial.
Correct.
Mr. Donovan, you had your hand raised. You're muted. Wait 1 minute.
He's unmuted. He has to unmute himself.
No. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I heard Patty state that per kilowatt, we get about $5 in tax revenue. Is that correct, Patty?
$5 per kilowatt, yes.
Okay. So as a basis for this, do we have an idea or rough order of magnitude of how many kilowatts per acre in revenue we get?
Mr. Renzi?
Hey, I'm not an expert on solar farms. I'm just the planning board guy.
If you don't know, just say I don't know. That's fine with me.
Don't get cocky.
I'm
Okay.
not.
Mr. Renzi, I'm going to ask you to stop.
Okay,
Can you answer the question?
yes, I can answer the question.
Great, thank you.
You
Go
get
right
one
ahead.
You get 1 megawatt for every 5 acres. Okay, here's your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi.
A megawatt per 5 acres.
Yep,
Correct.
so you get,
I don't know how many kilowatts are in a megawatt. I don't know that. You get 1 megawatt per acre.
thank you.
That's fine. That was my question. I just wanted to understand the basis for this, that's all. So we could put a number
Right,
per acre of installation of potential revenue and use it
Revenue,
as a basis for balancing out whether or not this is, financially feasible for the town or if it's
Right.
not. That's all. Thank you.
thank you.
The money is made by the landowner. He receives about $5,000 per acre from whoever is leasing it from them. That's just the things that I looked into and found out. So that's the person that makes the money. The person that's putting it up with the electricity is making the money, and the town doesn't get as much as it really should, like Patty says.
Right. I'm mainly interested in what the town receives.
Yeah,
for this and what the-
it should be higher.
There
But
are 1,000 kilowatts in 1 megawatt.
There you go.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanna.
Me and your friend on that Google.
When does our moratorium expire? In December or January?
No, before that, it should be up now. It was up in April, and then we put another 6 months. I think it's right around now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. We added 6 months, didn't we, Patty, after we, when you came in April? We extended
I
it 6 months.
originally asked for it to go till the end of June because then the new fiscal year would start and
Right. And I thought we extended again until, I thought it was December.
I thought it was.
Could be.
I was not at the meeting, but I did mark it on my calendar.
Mrs. Ryder, I see you mouthing something, but you're muted. Go
I
ahead.
believe it was November, the beginning of November, around there, middle.
I thought we went to the end of the year, but I could be wrong.
It's gonna be in the minutes somewhere.
Yeah. Joanna has it in her calendar, so.
It might take.
Dylan- Mrs. Dillon, do you have any recollection?
I think it was the beginning of November, but I'll get my other computer and I can log in and check.
Solar and wind moratorium, February 8th?
That's,
That
I
was the
think
first
that
one.
was just the wind one.
Yeah, the wind one you guys haven't touched yet. Am I correct, Mr. Renzi?
No, there's a moratorium on it.
The wind.
Right, but you haven't developed an ordinance yet.
No, we have not.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe, I don't know if I can even say this, but a discussion among the planning board was it be a lengthy thing, but I don't think it was, I don't know how favorable a wind turbine would be in the town.
Okay. But this ordinance does not pertain to the wind turbine, and we still have a moratorium on that until February. Am I correct? Joanna, is that what you said?
The wind turbine, February 8th, yes.
The wind turbine.
Right.
I think it's
How
November.
about, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Dillon, what?
No, I think it is the beginning of November for the solar.
Yes. It was 6 months after the second time we,
So I had put in the draft motion that I sent, I put February 8th, 2021. So I'm
I
not,
thought that's, because Heidi, I remember you making the motion, but I thought it was February, or I thought it was December, January. So, all right.
I can't remember.
okay, so Julia, I have the email. August 17th, the council kept the February 8th, 2021 dates you wrote in for both the solar and the wind moratorium ordinances.
Okay, thank you.
So it's till
February 8th.
February?
I never received the signed copy, but I wasn't at that meeting. But this this is what Julia sent me. She had covered the meeting, so I
I
have.
thought it was February too. I really did. I thought we.
I thought it was
after the new year.
later. I thought December or January.
I had
Okay.
put February because it was a 6-month, and then I
Yep.
told her if you guys wanted it sooner, just scratch it out. So
Yeah.
we're good
Okay.
till February.
All right.
Yeah, looking at the same
Anyone
mark.
else?
Can I ask
Anyone else on the council have something to say? Heidi, did you?
Yes. When did the caps go in on the solar, Joanna? And was that just on tangible or?
It was just
So-
on tangible, and they went in
Okay.
a while ago. I think before 16, 17, Patty?
Yeah,
Okay.
around there.
The real estate one right now, there is an active challenge.
Okay.
There has not been a decision. It looked like the judge, the Superior Court judge, was leaning towards not providing them the relief they wanted. I have not seen a final decision. That does not mean that they're not going to appeal it to the Supreme Court, nor does it mean that the tax, the legislator just can't go change the tax, which is what they did with the tangibles, which very well could happen with the real estate. So that's really in flux.
Okay, because I had some estimates on what the real estate taxes on 3 of the solar farm properties were. One of them, the real estate taxes increased by like $6,000 for having a solar farm. Another one increased by $20,000. You know the ones I'm talking about, Patty?
Yes.
And the real estate taxes on another one increased by, that one was minimal. It was only like $300 or something. Is that still the case? Are the
Yes, as of right now.
But there's a challenge that could change all of this.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Like
Okay.
the solar farm on 101, originally the original owners were paying a little over $2,000 in taxes on that property.
Yep.
So now they're being taxed at $40,000 an acre.
Okay.
At what?
I know that we're talking about, the financial aspect and what it will bring in, but we can't prohibit solar farms. So we're stuck.
Right.
We need to.
Right.
Right.
So we just need to make sure we have the best ordinance we can have to protect the town and to help the citizens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think there's anything else that we need to add to this? To me, this one seems like it's pretty much covered everything, and the brownfield, adding the brownfield, I think is.
I do like Jennifer's letter here, her adage. And before she left, she and I had talked about this at length. And I would go along with what Jennifer put in as recommendations. I think she was a smart cookie and spent a lot of time on this. So, but that's just me.
Yeah,
No, I agree.
I agree too.
Well, I'm still questioning the 40%. I think Anthony may be right, that they're gonna come in and cut more forests to make the property big enough to put what they need on.
Well, they need to get the light for the solar panels. Isn't that why they would be cutting that much more, Anthony? Is that how that works?
It's all dollars and cents, Heidi. If there's a 10-acre parcel, if there's a 20-acre parcel and they want to go in on 10 acres, we allow them only to do 40% on the 10 acres.
8 acres.
Then they're going to go to that next 10 acres and they're going to clear the 20 acres so they get enough solar panels to do what they want to do, to get their megawatts. That's how it works.
But if it's a 20-acre parcel, then and they wanted to do 10 acres, that's not 40%. They'd be fine.
That's 50%.
No, 25%. 40-acre parcel.
Oh,
10
you guys,
acres.
hold on. You guys want to use, maybe I missed the whole thing. She wants to, Jennifer's is 40% of a 40-acre piece, 40 acres being the biggest, but being the parcel, and you can't use no more than 40% of the 40 acres. Is that
Right?
Is that
What
what
I
she's
read
getting
was
at?
Yeah.
40% of any parcel, right?
Right, 40% of,
Whether
it says
it's
not
on-
to exceed 40% of the land suitable for development of the lot, unless it's a brownfield.
Right, and
Okay.
it-
So, okay, so basically a 40 acre parcel, they would only be able to use 16 acres of it.
10.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, 10.
I went to math.
Yeah, I missed that class. You're right, 10 acres. So that's where I'm coming at. You know, now 10 acres to those guys isn't enough to the people that want to do it.
But they can't go anymore, right?
More than 40 acres, so.
Right? They can't go any more than that. That's what we want to make sure of, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I don't have a horse in this race. I just spent, you know, a year and a half trying to come up with all of this stuff. Mr. Rogers he does his math and knows about this stuff.
Mr. Rogers, you have your hand raised?
Unmute yourself, Gordon.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I think the 40% is restricted, but the way I read it, and I read the ordinance, is, for example, let's say they buy a 100-acre parcel. And of that 100-acre parcel, 10 acres is wetlands. That brings it down to 90. Or let's say 20 acres is wetlands. That brings it down to 80 acres.
Right.
You could only use 40% of that 80 acres, which would be 36 acres of that 80 once you take out the wetlands. You do it with a 200-acre parcel and 20 acres is wet, they'll be able to do 70 acres. It's 40% of that 200 acres minus what is already not
The
buildable.
usable, right.
Right, with
The
wetlands. I think-
usable, suitable, yeah, for development.
Right, and we don't have a lot of 200-acre parcels. For example, I can think of one right now that's between Snagwood and Shippey Schoolhouse, right in the middle of nowhere, with just no right away from Snagwood. Even with a 100-foot setback, you would never be able to see that unless you were flying a drone over above. I agree with the 40% versus the 40 acres. I think it should be a little more than 40%. I do know, I was at a meeting in West Greenwich, and the revenue that they're bringing in is around 1.2 million a year. I don't know if that's value with their tax dollars, but that's the number that was thrown out. They have put a stop on a moratorium and started tightening theirs up. The town of Forster actually has 4 solar farms. Everybody keeps forgetting. The one on Shippey Schoolhouse and Route 6, the last one went in, is 2.8 acres. The one across the street that was prior to that was 8 acres. The one on 101 is 22 acres. And the fourth and very first lodge when it came into the town of Forster is on Theodore Forster Drive, which is 4 acres or maybe 5. So that puts the total town as it currently stands, built solar in, including 101, it's not done yet, at under 40 acres of total solar farm in the town of Forster. So to try and do that, and then again on the tax value, somebody who has that 20 acres on 101, they put their backland in open space, it's down to about a value of a little less than 200 an acre. So let's say 200 an acre, just for the sake of argument, takes 5 acres to get $1,000. Our mill rate's $24. So for every 5 acres, they were paying $25 or $23. That went from 200 an acre inside the fence of 22 acres to $40,000. And I believe that is separate from the $5 per kilowatt on the system itself. It's those two added together. So there is the argument, and I'm not for or against it. I just know we have a revenue problem in town. I know that solar array, a contractor went in there and he put the solar array in and he moved a lot of rock and a lot of site work. And it can be done for houses too. So realistically, you could probably put 20 acres times 5 or 6, 7 or 8 houses on that lot, bringing in a little more tax revenue, but the cost of the expenses with fire, rescue, police, school children is almost a negative effect. So there's that fine balance. Where that is, it all depends on where you fall down on it. So, I mean, I'm different than my neighbor and different from the other neighbor. So there is no perfect thing to it, but I think this does help. I think 40% is a little low. Like I said, your GBM allows total coverage of 60% of usable land, and that's with paving, completely sealing it up. where a solar farm does not seal up nothing other than the pole going in the ground. So I think, like I said, that should be a little more, 40% of the total property. I do not agree with maxing it at 40 acres, because what's going to happen with that is these guys are going to come in and they're going to buy a whole bunch of lots and put in 10-acre solar arrays to stay under the 40. Whereas the system, like you said, can only hold so much. So do you want 3 of them on Cucumber Hill Road, 2 of them on South Killenly, all these little 1, 2, 3, 4 acre solars all over the place? To me, are more eye damaging than one in the middle of nowhere on a 200-acre parcel in the woods that nobody's going to see off of a dirt road. So I think the 40 acre is wrong. I think 40% is better. I think maybe increasing it a little bit more. And the system will only allow so much until it gets upgraded. It's a danger doing the 40 acres. It creates them all over the place, very small. My point.
Thank you, Gordon. Mrs. Ryder. But if you can't, you know, just by increasing the 40%, you are not going to stop those small solar arrays, because if they pick up a 10-acre piece of property, that's all they can put on it. You're still going to end up with Cucumber Hill with several smaller arrays because the lot size dictates that. And we've seen on 101, on Route 6, at the corner of Chippy Schoolhouse and Route 6. Now that is how big?
2.8.
2.8. So, I mean, obviously it was profitable enough for that company to do that. So I disagree with allowing more on bigger pieces of property to save the small pieces, because that's not going to happen.
I'd like to add one more thing to that. You are correct, Lynn, to a certain extent, but I'll add 2 things that made Route 6 more viable to these contractors. The first thing they look at is there 3-phase? So I'll give you Forster. Cucumber Hill Road does have 3-phase. Not very many roads in the town of Forster do. Theodore Forster Drive, they ran new poles and ran it down, that short distance of road. The other thing that was very important that I believe that should have been under more commercial property is very difficult to create in towns because it infringes on the neighborhood. So nobody likes to see that. But what the, and this was the argument with the $5 kilowatt that I got very upset at the legislature by doing that. What the contractors realized and the solar companies realized, if we go to commercially zoned property, we're going to get less restrictions because somebody in that case would rather have a quiet solar farm sitting next to them on commercial property versus a 24-hour gas station that was allowed without a special use permit. They found very few restrictions in the neighborhoods when they went to commercial lots versus, I'll give example, Route 101. You can't even hardly see that, but the drive and the anger against that one going there was very much different than any one on Route 6. So they picked the areas, 1, that have 3-phase and 2 that will have less neighborhood restrictions. I really think the 40-acre will stop the big ones from coming in, but you'll add a lot of small ones. And like Anthony said, the system can only handle so much. And what will happen is when a big company comes in and it overcharges the system. Right now it's Chopmas. It's very old. It's going to be upgraded. They'll actually pay to have that upgraded. And then as everybody else comes on, they have to pay back the original guy that threw the money up to upgrade the substation. They pay him back for the work he front loaded. I really think 40 acres just creates small solar farms everywhere versus
40 acres or 40%?
40 acres will make it small. I think what they should have done as a town was put in a total megawatt cap and say, once we hit this point, we will readdress and maybe change things at that point. I know, Joanna, you're going to say you can't stop them, and that was probably be fought in court because you're eliminating, you're putting a ceiling on it, but it's controlling the amount.
Gordon, a 40-acre.
Could I ask this conversation to stop for 1 minute? I have a council member raising her hand.
Where?
I just want a clarification from Gordon. What did you say? 3 phases or 3 what? I didn't get that.
For example, Cheryl, we had 3-phase brought in on Cucumber Hill Road when the chicken farm went in.
That's the
3-phase
electric, wait 1 minute,
power lines.
Cheryl, it's the power lines that can handle the solar coming in.
It must, these solar companies must operate off a 3-phase system when they backfeed into the system. They have such powerful electricity, they have to feed into a 3-phase. They can't do a single phase. When you get on South Kinley or Harrington Road, them are single phase lines that feed those. Your main roads mostly have 3-phase, 101, Route 6, Cucumber Hill Road, Moosup Valley, the town hall. Those are 3-phase lines. For somebody put a solar, and I brought the example up of the 200-acre one off of Snagwood. It would be very expensive for them to send poles all the way down Snagwood, because on your back roads, the poles are set almost 300 feet apart because they're only carrying a small amount of wires. So when you go to 3-phase, they have to decrease the length between the poles because they're carrying much more weight of wire, and it's a large infrastructure thing. So these guys look at first, where is the 3-phase and where is their less restrictive neighbors, and they hit Route 6, and that's the reason why you put a 2.8 acre one up in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Renzi, I know you want to say something. I'm going to limit the amount of time because I want to move on with this, and leave it to the council. So go ahead.
Like I said at the beginning, there isn't enough infrastructure in the town of Foster to handle any of this. In fact, the small one it was the last that they could handle on Route 6. Okay, the transfer station is on Chopness Hill. They brought the electricity from 101 all the way to Chopness Hill to take it. So unless now there's, like Gordon said, there is 3-phase on Cucumber, but that 3-phase isn't big enough to handle big solar farms. So really, whichever way you want, like I said, I'm not pro or con, but a 40-acre solar farm is a pretty big solar farm.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Mrs. Ryder, just quickly, please, because I'm looking
I
at
have
the
a
time.
question for Mr. Antonellis that perhaps he can answer. Because the governor is so pro-green energy, I had heard at one point, at least I think I did, that that either the state was going to have to pay for it or National Grid was going to have to pay for it, but they were going to push putting more 3-phase capability in communities. Did you hear anything about that?
I haven't. Joanna, have you?
The governor is big on green energy, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, and
Of course.
and I believe I have heard some rumors that something is going to, and I did not necessarily hear specifics, but I do think you are going to see more and more of it, and that she is going to continue policies to encourage it.
The new Green Deal.
So
Because we have
3-phase, so a lack of 3-phase is not going to save us.
No, and they could build another transfer station. I mean, the infrastructure right now is what it is, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way. We could see more.
Okay.
I mean, I just see a potential on the old Black Forest farm, which is not going to be a horse farm by December. It's not going to be good for much else besides solar. And I wouldn't want to see somebody coming in and putting a 200-acre solar farm in there. And I doubt the abutters would either.
All right, so council members, we had closed the public hearing, but then call me Chris Wallace. We can move on now to the ordinance in front of you. What is the pleasure of the council?
I, for one, would like to see it, I believe, change to 40%. I don't want to see it go higher, but I think the 40% from the discussion that's ensued makes the most sense in protecting and preserving and still allowing people their rights to put in their solar farms.
So Cheryl, you want to adopt all of what Jennifer had suggested? It's
That's the brownfield, the solar land coverage.
I would go along
except
with
if it's
that.
a brownfield.
Excuse me, Joey?
It was the 40%, except if it was the brownfield, it could be
Right.
more than the 40%.
I'll make a motion to approve the solar ordinance as presented with the additions that Jennifer Siciliano presented us, which was the brownfield provision and the 40% provision.
So the definitions being the brownfield, solar land coverage, and what, adding that section for the solar land coverage.
Yes.
So Heidi has
Second.
made a motion, Chris seconded. Further discussion.
I already spoke to it, so.
What are our thoughts about the 100-foot versus the 200-foot setback? And what are our thoughts in regards to the, I'm not sure of the correct verbiage, but the terrain that Mrs. Ryder was discussing?
I think that's covered in the proposed
Within-
ordinance. 100, I didn't
But
put
it's
motion.
100, but would we want to change it, right?
No, that's
Right, that was, I'm just thinking of the things that were brought up tonight.
Well, I would approve, I thought maybe a good compromise would be 150 feet back. That 200 seems to be the people that oppose, 100 seems to be the people that are for it. I thought maybe we could come up with a compromise of 150. I'm all about compromising.
Right. And I thought about making it graduated scale. That we'd graduate the setback with the size of the piece of property.
So this would have to amend the motion.
But can I say something to Chris? If we did that, Chris, and you look at the Route 6 one that's 2.28 acres, then it's right there. It's right in your
It
face.
wouldn't be there if it had a 100-foot setback.
Well,
Right,
you
we
just said
didn't
a
have that.
graduated scale, so I didn't know if that takes away that.
I think the 100 foot is adequate.
No, not right now.
Joanna?
Yeah, I'll get my phone and do it.
I can, so maybe I could make a suggestion about Chris's graduated scale. So maybe rather than saying it would be a graduated scale, you could impose the 150 or the 200-foot setback, but you could allow the planning board to deviate from that if the terrain masking was such that it was not visible, and that could be their decision. Because I
like that. I like that. So that it's there, but the terrain masking what Mrs. Ryder was talking about. Mike, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Joanna, correct me if I'm wrong. Through the site plan review and special use permit review, the planning board could institute more stringent setbacks if they would like in the review. Could they do that?
So they,
If
if it's not in the ordinance, we can't do more stringent. But if we had
Okay.
something saying it's 200 feet, but the planning board can do less than if
Right.
it finds X, Y, and Z. So I think, I mean, there's a number of reviews. So if we give the planning board some leeway,
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm all in favor of giving the planning board the ability to make effective decisions based on the information that they're given. So, you know, if an applicant can prove that less stringent setbacks would be reasonable, that, you know, compromise, as Ms. Hawes was saying, is always good.
and
So
every-
would that be part of the motion? Or is that just inferred that the planning board has that ability?
no, you would need to decide on the and then make that amendment.
Okay, before we move on, there are two people that joined late that would like to speak, Amita and Mr. Spazio. So Amita, would you go first?
Yes, can you hear me? I don't know if my mic is on.
Yes, we can hear you,
So,
Amita.
As Ms. Ryder said, and I think Denise, as you already echoed, and as I spoke to at the public hearing, I really urge that you go with bigger numbers like 200, and yes, allow for variance there too. I don't know, and forgive me because I am late, whether we're talking about commercial or we're talking about all. And there is a difference because For example, Hartford Solar is in the middle of a residential ag zone, and it's a very different thing than what we might do on Route 6 or any other commercial zone. So a second question pertinent to this is it something that the planning board would have authority to do, or it would be somewhat of a zoning variance and would have to go through ZBR? And that's a very different process because of the legal, you know, the legal aspects of what the ZBR does. That's a semi-legal court kind of thing with certain types of appeal. So I'd like counsel to clarify that.
Right.
Thank
So-
you. I was going to refer to Joanna. Go ahead, Joanna.
So the planning board would have some input by way of recommendation, but the final say would be via special use permit, which is heard by the zoning board. Now, I will say that we cannot deem it to be a variance because it would be a dimensional variance, and currently our zoning ordinance does not allow for somebody to apply for a special use permit and a zoning and a dimensional variance at the same time. Now, the planning board has worked on an amendment to that ordinance, which has not been brought forward by the council. So we can't write an ordinance right now that would allow somebody to request a dimensional variance because our ordinance does not allow it. There's a court case which indicates that there has to be a specific provision. But we can do it just via the special use process, which is the same thing as the variance process as you were talking about through the zoning board of review. So there is some quote unquote legal teeth there. So my
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's my point is that I think you need both, and having it go through ZBR at some point and planning board gives both the proponents and people who might have ideas an opportunity to work those out because there's a special use. And as you know, I'm for making this type of ordinance not too loose, but rather when we want to allow something that's different, then that's by a variance or a special process. Because we've seen what's happened. We have two good examples.
Cheryl, if it's all right, if Mr. Savazio speaks. Mr. Savazio.
Unmute yourself, Ron.
Me?
Yep, I can hear you. I can hear you. Go ahead.
I find it interesting that we're always trying to do the same thing, and that is find ways to prevent something. Route 101 is the perfect example. 100 people showed up screaming and yelling, having all kinds of misinformation, and right now, nobody can see it. Right? Nobody knows it's there.
Mr. Savazio, are you making a comment
for 30
pro
years,
or con?
right, for 30 years, I've been saying every time you turn something down, something worse comes to us. So 100 foot or 200 foot, the greater thing is what I call berms, and you people are calling some kind of terrain masking, the same thing. I think you should leave this open to the planning board and the zoning board to protect the community site-wise.
I think maybe you missed that part of it, Mr. Savazio, where Joanna was just mentioning that.
I saw that. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to get out of 100 foot, 200 foot, 150 foot, and leave it to your planning board and your zoning board to protect the view of how the people are affected by the site. Now, I've been up on that site, and there's not one person in any part of that area that can see that, except if you stand on the barn roof of the people on the left-hand side, all right? So those people did a good job. So it's a matter of who you bring to the community and how much money they're willing to invest. Those people invested $10 million. And
But Mr.
there's been a lot of
Savazio, it's not
decisions.
us bringing it as much as it is them coming to us.
They're coming to us because we have left the land fallow and turned so many things down. So they're going to continue to come to us. Joanna said about three-phase, Gordon said about three-phase. As long as we have land, they're going to come to us. As long as the governor wants it, they're going to come to us. And the bigger thing is, you're not going to prevent it no matter what you do. The bigger thing is to make it not detractive.
Thank you. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this
Right.
Well, the 100-foot means nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Savazio. Ms. Hawes?
I almost forgot what I wanted to ask. This ordinance would apply to everyone, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Home and?
Home is separate. Home is a minor, I believe it's called.
Okay, so, but it would fit under this ordinance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Home is minor or medium, depending on the size.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
One quick question, Joanna. I think I asked this at the beginning of this whole process, maybe 3 years ago. Why can't the planning board take every applicant on a individual basis like we take everyone else? So in other words, if they came to us with a piece of property that we didn't think was the right way, we could set a setback of 100. And if it was another piece of property, we could give them a setback of 200. Or does it all have to be in black and white in an ordinance? Or can we make it vague so that we do have the discretion, the planning and the zoning board can make it? I don't know. That's just because the town is so different. The land is so different. The areas are so different. It's not cookie cutter. You know, I don't know if we can do it. And that's just a question I have.
But that's what Joanna said before.
Right. Right.
So leaving it open to the planning board can impose any restrictions they want on each parcel is so arbitrary that you are just opening yourself up to lawsuits.
Yeah.
Right. I like that idea, Anthony, but I think we might not always have such a profound group as we do right now on the planning board that is very knowledgeable and moving forward.
That was good,
We
Denise.
do not have that. So we need to protect the town.
You got my vote, baby.
So, Joanna, Mrs. Dillon, you
Yes.
wanted to, Joanna had given us some amendment type language. Did you happen to get that? Do we need to?
Oh, no, I'm
have
sorry,
a
Joanna.
motion. We
I
have a
did not-
motion on the floor and then there was discussion about amendment.
My motion,
Right.
Denise, was
I
to
only have,
accept the solar ordinance as it's presented with
Right.
the addition of the language of the brown fields and the 40%. That was my motion. Seconded.
That
and we
was
have-
the main motion. And then Cheryl started talking about amending it.
Right.
So, Cheryl.
We can't give the planning board the option of making a choice based on each request. So I would amend it to include moving it back to 150 feet.
Is there a second to that amendment? I would second that.
Thank you.
Discussion on the amendment.
I just feel that listening to the people and they're very concerned and I get that. If that makes it more, I mean, okay, 101, we can't see, I get that. But we see that ugliness on Route 6 every day. So I would just like to ensure that we don't have it staring at us. I think it's ugly driving through town and seeing those. And there are people on here that are very concerned about that. That's my reasoning. I think that the masking, the terrain masking is.
Oh, the
much
berm, as
better-
Mr. Savazio
Right,
calls it, yeah.
much better than the the things that they
Trees,
put up
yeah.
around Route 101, Route 6, right?
Yeah.
So I would like that to be there.
And I see several people have their hands raised, and Mrs. Dillon, I'm going to just leave it to the council now at this point, because we could go on forever. So we had our public hearing, we closed our public hearing, it's now the council. Mr. Stone, you had discussion to the amendment?
Yeah, so we can just correct me, Joanna, if I'm not correct. We can go down, but we can't go up on the setbacks.
What do you mean?
In other words, we can't, if we put in 150 feet in the ordinance, we can't make them do 200 feet.
Right.
But
But I guess you could, well, we can word it how you would like to be worded. We can say up to, so that the board can impose. It would be no less than 100, no more than 200.
Okay.
I didn't think we could do that. I thought that was giving them too much latitude.
No, that you can do. Those two, as long as you have some parameters. I think we could also.
But if we put 150 feet,
then it's 150 feet.
it's
Right.
150 feet. We can't go to 200.
So if we say a minimum of 100
and no
to
more,
a maximum of 200.
That would work.
Okay, that I would agree to.
Okay. So you're going to withdraw.
I will amend my amendment to read
Wait a minute,
no
Cheryl.
less than 100 feet and a maximum of 200 feet.
No.
150?
No, if you're gonna give yourself,
I know, Susan's
No,
having
but he said a
little.
minimum of 100.
Can we wait 1 minute? Susan, what do you need us to do?
No, Cheryl, did you withdraw your motion?
Yes.
You withdrew the
Chris, did you
amended, and I second it. I withdraw my second.
Chris-
So now
Okay. So go
Cheryl has
ahead.
made a motion to
No
amend
less.
the other one. No less than 100, no more than 200.
Is that
right?
Real quick,
No, Mrs. Ryder, we're not taking any questions.
real quick.
Mrs. Stone, Mr. Stone.
Did I say it wrong?
But we don't have a second on her.
Okay.
Make it
Is
more than
anybody going to
200.
second it?
Make it more than 200.
Mr. Renzi, we're not taking any more from the public. We're taking from the
I'm not
council.
I'm not the public.
You're not the council either. Thank
I'm
you.
not, no, you're right, but I'm the
You're
planner.
not the council. Thank
I'm the
you.
guy that spent the year coming up with this stuff for you guys to make a decision in minutes.
I understand that, Mr. Renzi.
Okay?
Thank you.
Has that
Chris,
been
what were you
seconded?
going to say? You seconded it, Mr. Moreau?
Has it been seconded?
No, it has not.
I'll second it, so discussion.
So for discussion, so Cheryl made the motion, no less than 100, no greater than 200. It was seconded by Bob Moreau.
And I also have a question to ask our solicitor.
Okay.
Under the setbacks, it says medium solar installation shall have at the minimum maintained 100-foot setback from adjacent property lines. And landscaping in the plan may include this 100-foot setback. I read that as giving the planning board flexibility. If the minimum is 100, that means that they can institute a maximum, more to it. Am I
Yeah.
incorrect?
Well, as written, it does give them some leeway. In my
Gives them
opinion, it without having something envisioned as a maximum,
Right.
that the planning board going or the zoning board going willy-nilly, you are opening yourself up to.
Right, so we need to
So
establish.
you want parameters in
Yeah.
there. Chris, what would your discussion be? And you're muted, Chris.
He muted himself.
Yep. You're still muted.
Hang on.
Okay,
I'm
there you
working
are.
on it. My issue was that there may be situations where you want to go less than 100.
Okay.
Have a minimum of 100.
Oh.
Okay.
How about if we make it 50 to
No.
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 The concern is the site in the appeal. That's why we came up with 100. But
Right.
what Joanna just said, which makes a lot of difference, which can protect us, I would make it more than 200 with the discretion, 100 to 300. Some towns went as much as 500, but ended up with variances. So if we went 100, 300, and then let the planning board or the zoning board, we know they can come in at 100, but you know what? We can bump them back depending where it is. If another one came up on Route 6 per se, and we don't really want to look at it, we can tell them they can go back another 300 feet, but no less than 100. The other thing also is everything else that's written, okay, in this ordinance, as far as terrain masking, there's other things that we overlooked. Black fence, natural vegetation on the bottom, 6-foot pine trees, 6-foot trees. If they were to do, if their landscape architects came in and did what the planning board put on paper, you won't see that solar farm, whether it's 50 feet or 500 feet. Just saying. But
Thank you, Mr. Renzi.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have.
All right, we'll leave it where it is then.
We have a motion and then an amended motion. Any further discussion from the council regarding the amended motion?
Joanna, Denise, sorry. Joanna, if you go up to 200 feet and they say the planning board gives them 100 or
Yep.
gives them 150.
Yep.
If they take them to court, they can't. They're not legally going to get into trouble for that.
No.
Right?
No, because we've envisioned that and I mean, I think the language, and if the language should say something along the lines of 100, a minimum of 100, a maximum of 200, and the board should be decided based upon the subject piece of land, the terrain masking, and the landscape plan as determined by literally it'd be the zoning board would make the final determination.
So that should be part of it.
If you give, I think it's okay if that's the general idea and you give Mike and I the okay to add that language in, we can do that.
Right.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Cheryl?
Yes, it does. Mhm.
So are you withdrawing your amendment again?
I don't have to because we'll give them the leeway to put that in, right?
Okay. All right. As long as you're saying that.
Yeah.
Say that.
I am
say that.
adding to my amendment that we give Mike and Joanna the leeway to add the additional language necessary.
Should it say the planner and the attorney with or the solicitor, not
Yes, yeah.
specifically? Okay.
No, I didn't mean the names. I meant.
Right. The position.
Yep.
Okay, so that being said, I'm going to ask for a vote on the amended motion. Mrs. Dillon.
Sure. Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
Chris Stone,
Aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
Bob Moreau,
Aye.
and Denise DeFranco.
Aye.
Great.
To the main motion to accept the ordinance as presented to include the recommendations of Jennifer Cicilline dated March 9th, 2020. Mrs. Dillon.
Sure. Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
Chris Stone,
Aye.
Denise DeFranco,
Aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
and Bob Moreau.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next public hearing, propose amendments to off-street parking. Again, I will open up the public hearing to that, and I will start with either Anthony or Mr. Antonellis explaining this, which we have before us.
Anthony, you want me to go ahead?
You could read it, and then I know I'm going to have to explain it. Go ahead, buddy.
All right. It's a pretty short memorandum that Jennifer sent along, or I think it was signed by Mike Carpenter,
Mr.
Ron
Savazio.
Savazio, and Jennifer.
Mike Carpenter.
Yep.
Yep. If you don't mind, I think rather than summarize, I'll just sort of read through it.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And Savazio.
Just skipping down a little bit. Therefore, our solicitor has prepared the following changes for your consideration. Section 38-19, Table of Uses, Transportation and Parking. Number 2, Commercial Off-Street Parking Facility in agricultural residential zone would be changed from not allowed to allowed by special use permit with an asterisk. And that asterisk below says, in an agricultural residential district, a commercial off-street parking facility must be located on a property which is in excess of 10 acres and in no event shall be permitted on vacant land. In section 38-286, amended as follows. Subsection D, in any agricultural residential district, the parking storage of commercial vehicles over 26,000 pound capacity and of commercial or house trailers, not including camping trailers, shall not be permitted except where such parking or storage is directly related to and is accessory to a permitted use or legal pre-existing use. Excuse me. Subsection E, effective fill and date. In any agricultural residential district, the parking or storage of commercial vehicles under 26,000 pound capacity shall be permitted pursuant to the following conditions. And there are 3 conditions. Number 1, only up to 2 such vehicles per property may be parked or stored. Number 2, the commercial vehicle must be duly registered at all times bearing a valid license plate and visible registration sticker. And number 3, the vehicle must be parked within the driveway, stored in a garage or otherwise designated parking area as required by the off-street parking requirements set forth in subsection C of this section, and at no time shall said commercial vehicle be parked or stored upon the roadway. That's it.
Thank you. Before we go further, I would just like some clarification for the general public here. Under 26,000 pound capacity, what exactly kind of truck? Tell me a truck that fits.
It's
not my pickup truck outside.
No. Anthony, I think you have a little bit more familiarity with this. My understanding is that that excludes over 26,000 is something like a semi truck.
That's the ordinance, the way it's written right now, a 1,500 pound, anything over a 1,500 pound truck cannot be parked in a yard, which means the new bigger pickup trucks, a dually pickup truck, the small landscape dump truck, the way the ordinance is written now, are not really allowed to park in their driveway. That's how old the ordinance is.
I understand that, but what is an example of a truck that's under 26,000 pound capacity?
Anywhere from a pickup truck to a small dump truck.
It is right under what you'd need a CDL for.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anywhere from a pickup truck to a box
So
can.
the maximum would be a small dump truck.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to open it up to the public. Those opposed to this change to the ordinance. Mrs. Dillon? Do you see anybody?
Give me a second. It's too-
There's
No?
a gentleman that called
Mrs.
me on the telephone.
Okay.
Noon. His name was George. He lives on Route 6. Adamantly against this. He says we got too many rules.
Too many rules?
Too many rules.
Okay. Thank you, George. Mrs. Ryder, you have?
Yeah, I just had a question. I know, it says about it has to be in the driveway and whatever. But we all know that sometimes the whole front of somebody's property is, quote, a driveway. What prevents them from parking? I mean, it's just that's, you've seen the trucks parked so they're extremely visible. They're not on the road, but boy, they're close.
I think a driveway is permitted by the DPW director. So if it's not a permitted driveway, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna, a permitted driveway permitted by the DPW director, then it's not a driveway.
Yeah, it needs to be the driveway that's like listed on your.
How can I,
Not your.
But
Okay,
one
so
minute, I saw your hand, Gunter. We're
Sorry.
answering one question at a time.
So it couldn't be, I know of one on Route 94 where the trailer truck is parked in the woods, right next to the house. It's not on, well, maybe it is technically a driveway. I don't know.
Well,
What's to prevent someone just, cutting down some trees and plunking it there?
Well, once again, it's a permitted driveway by the DPW, and our zoning official would have to go out and cite them.
and I don't think a trailer, if you had like a trailer tractor truck, that doesn't fit in this ordinance.
Right, that's in violation even if we do this.
Unless it is, so if you had a permitted business at your house, if you had like an accessory use and you had something that you use a tractor trailer for, then you could park it in your driveway.
Right, I know another instance on East Killingley Road where there have to be 5 or 6 large tree cutting trucks, all in front of the house. I guess you could technically say that's all of a driveway, but.
Again, a driveway is permitted by the DPW director.
So they can just park them right there.
If it's a permitted driveway, and according to this, it's only 2 vehicles, am I correct?
Yeah.
And Mr. Bay, you had a question.
my first question is, I assuming does this size of vehicles have air brakes and no hydraulic brakes? Is this correct?
Air brakes and, oh, you got me. I don't know. Go ahead, Mr. Renzi.
Oh, Gordon can answer it.
Okay, then Gordon.
I can't understand Gunther. Go ahead,
Excuse
Gordon.
me, Mr. Renzi, thank you. Inappropriate. Mr. Renzi, absolutely inappropriate.
What? I just said I can't understand him.
Inappropriate. Mr. Rogers.
He said he can't understand him, Denise.
I know what he's saying.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Rogers.
Not to pick on anybody, but air brakes or hydraulic brakes is irrelevant. It's based on the GVW of the vehicle, 26,000. You can have air brakes on or under that. That is irrelevant to the question, but it does bring up what I was going to ask. 2 points. For example, one example was brought up on Route 94. The town does not give driveway permits. That is a state road. That all those driveway permits are through the state. The town has no say on driveway permits on the state road. Also, we are going to go by the registered vehicle weight. For example, everybody's familiar with my black Ford 6-wheel dump truck, correct? It's
yes.
Black truck GP. That is actually registered at 34,700. So that exceeds the amount. What you're talking about is light duty dump trucks are under 26,000. So even your town DPW trucks, your Max and your Internationals exceed the GVW. They're all around 34,000. It's smaller vehicles that would box trucks and stuff would qualify for under 26,000. All 10-wheelers, all tri-axles. No, I do have to ask one question because of the legal ramifications. The old ordinance wasn't 1,500, it was 1.5 ton. Unless the vehicles, and hopefully this language stays in there,
It did.
is an accessory to the permitted use. For example, somebody with a, okay,
It's
because
still
somebody
there.
with somebody
It's
with a
still
dairy farm or
Yeah.
farming practices are exempt from that because
It's
it's
still
permitted and they are.
That's right.
Joanna is saying, Gunter, did that answer your question?
Yes, this answers my question there, and then I come to another thing. What I see then coming up, it's the bigger vehicles allowed to sit in a driveway. And what I see here, so my neighbor has a business, parks his 2 vehicles there, and 5 o'clock in the morning, he starts them up and lets them run for half an hour in the winter to warm. And
Well,
the same is it's already here on South Killingley. Somebody was just laughing. I have here trucks going here by and on a Saturday, on a Sunday, very loud. I cannot enjoy in the summer a cup of coffee on my deck. The trucks here flying by and very loud and very noisy. And I don't see any more trucks or bigger trucks in my neighborhood. But we are a town where people moving to have it quiet, to have it peaceful, and not have more the escaping from the noise and the bustling of the city. They want to have a peaceful and quiet. I will not see again but they're coming out of the city and have big or bigger trucks standing again in the driveways and running there and get started 5 o'clock in the morning where the person needs to go to work. So I'm against the change.
Thank you, Gunther. Anyone else in opposition to this proposed change?
Hold on. Nope.
Anyone in favor of the proposed change? No one, Mrs. Dillon?
I have no one here. Hold on, let me just double check again.
I see Gordon has his hand raised. I'm going to ask you to be brief, Gordon.
Yeah, I just did have one question. I checked it over a little bit. There's something in it that dictates this is only allowed in 10 acres or above?
Yes.
No.
Okay. I was going to
And,
say because
must be, go ahead, Joanna.
So let me clarify. There are two different changes that we're talking about. The first is that if somebody wants to have a commercial off-street parking facility in an AR zone, right now it's prohibited, strictly prohibited. We are changing that to allow it by special use permit.
Right.
Then the second change, and that's on the use table, but that's, so that 10 acres is relative if you want to have a commercial off-street parking facility on your property in an AR zone, you can do it with a special use permit, but only if you have 10 acres or more. So you can't do it on a 5-acre parcel.
that's how I read it. And I think, for example, I mean, if we're going to allow it through a special use permit, which is all the neighbors get notified.
Correct.
200-foot brothers, it's held in public. They have income, have their say. I don't think we should have the 10-acre because that eliminates a lot of people just because they have a little bit less land. We have 5-acre zoning, so I really think it just should be taken out. Special use permit. If the neighbors don't like it, they have a say.
This is for, so there's a distinction. So this is for a commercial off-street parking facility, meaning that you are going to be storing more than, so let's say you want to store, you have a lot that's 20 acres and you want to make like a little parking lot so somebody can store like 10 of their dump trucks, like that.
All right.
So these are two different things.
Yeah.
Two different things.
I get it now. I think it was specially crafted for a certain person, it seems like. But,
Mr.
yeah, okay.
Rogers, thank you. We'll move on. Anyone else in favor?
Hold on.
As a citizen, I can speak, correct?
Of course you can. Are you speaking in favor?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
What some of the people might not know is what's called owner-operator. There are a lot of owner-operators in the town of Foster who own a dump truck that exceeds the 26,000 pounds. That is their personal business. They get in their truck and they go to work and they come home and they park it in their yard. That allows them to do it. But that also allows is they could also go park them trucks someplace else, makes it inconvenient. And there are some guys that work for companies, believe it or not, that I've questioned. The company gives them that truck to take home. That's basically their work truck and they go to work with it. Okay, so there are more people in town that are owner operators that have this situation, and the way it is now, they can't do it, but now they are allowed to do it and be within compliance. Okay, and it gives the tax assessor a shot at going and get them because they're in their yard and she can tax them. That's not why it was done, but that's what will end up happening.
Okay,
This is for only vehicles under 26,000 and under, correct?
No. All right.
No, I'm talking CDL trucks, Gordon, a triaxle.
Yeah.
The under 26 is allowed. Over 26, you're allowed to carry 2 and special use permit for it.
So to correct me if I'm wrong, trailer trucks, 53-foot boxes with the tractors, twin screws, with a special use permit and 10 acres, you can have at least 2 trailer trucks or more with permission next to your residential house, if this passes.
Yes.
Not liking it.
Thank you. Mr. Bay, 1 second. Let me see if there's anybody else that wants to speak in favor of this. Now we're talking about people that are in favor of it. Mr. Bay, I got the impression you were not in favor of it.
Mike, I have just a question. The weight, is it the gross weight, also the empty vehicle, or the loaded vehicle?
It just says here 26,000 pound capacity.
Which that's what it would be registered for.
Right.
Registered for, right. It's not with something in it, it's just the truck itself with nothing in it.
Gross weight.
Gross weight. Okay. Hearing that there is nobody else speaking, I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, this is the first reading, so we do not vote on it tonight. Is there anything that you want to discuss at this point, or do you want to hold off?
I have some questions. Yeah. The way I read this, Joanna, it sounds a little different than, the way that you were talking. The way I read it was that any vehicles over 26,000 pounds would not be allowed, or now, I'm sorry, now would be allowed 2 vehicles as long as you had 10 acres.
No.
Okay, that's the way I read that.
So I think it's because they're so close together, it's confusing. So anything that is over, currently, if you have, anything that is under 26,000 capacity
is permitted.
It is permitted, but you can only have 2, and there are all these conditions, unless you have a legal pre-existing accessory use.
Anything under 26,000?
It's under 26,000 pounds, unless you have a pre-existing and or legal accessory use. So anything under 26,000, you can have 2. They have to be registered. They have to be in your driveway.
So like Denise asked before, the way, if that reads exactly the way you just said it, anything under 26,000 could be, you can only have 2 pickup trucks.
Correct. Because right now you're allowed none. Then anything that's over 26,000 pound capacity, if you want to store those vehicles on your property, you have to have 10 acres or more, and you have to apply to have a commercial off-street parking facility, and you need to get a special use permit.
Why 10 acres? Oh,
yeah, I'm not crazy about the 10 acres. I'm thinking, when I read it, that was something that jumped out at me. Like, why, if you have 5 acres is a decent size piece of property. Yeah. And you can have, we have a riding ring, a big riding ring. You could put vehicles in there. But I just don't understand what the distinction between the 5 acres and the 10 acres. I mean, most people in town have a 5 acre minimum house lot, and they're also working. I'm just saying, why the 10 and.
So I think when the planning board was doing it, they were concerned about your neighbors. So do you want your neighbors parking 3 tractor trailers in their yard? And then obviously they're not going to fit in the driveway. Where are they going to be? Are they going to be on the property line? So that was just something the planning board felt if you had 10 acres, you could situate it in such a way that it was hidden. But the council can do whatever they like.
But they have to be in a driveway. I think there's a bunch of things I'd like to change about this. I just have a lot of questions.
I have another question too concerning that particular.
Okay, I got a question.
We can't hear you very well.
We can't hear you, Bob.
Okay, concerning the off-street parking facility, I've run into this in the past. I had a neighbor who owned more than 10 acres. He had my neighboring property is over 24 acres. If this was today, he could put this facility on his piece of property. His family owned an oil company in Cranston. He wanted to bring his vehicles up to that piece of property, have them parked on that property. So I have an issue with that. It's an oil company. So what you're saying here is that someone can bring any particular, it doesn't have to be the owner of those vehicles. You can have a commercial parking facility for anyone's vehicles, whether they're residents of the town or not. And that's another issue I have with some of this too, concerning vehicles being parked in the people's driveways. It doesn't say that this applies to vehicles that belong to citizens of the town. So you could have vehicles from all over the state coming into town and parking up here.
I thought I read somewhere where they had to be, oh no, that was next.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm
You read-
confusing my ordinances.
I mean, I don't have a problem with people, it's their work vehicle and they get in it every morning because their employer said, this is your vehicle, you bring it home, you bring it back. I have a problem with people starting to bring vehicles into town from just about everywhere.
Can I make a suggestion then? Can I make a suggestion, because it seems like so far 2 of our council members have had concerns. If we're not voting on it tonight. We're going to be meeting on it again on the 22nd is our next meeting, I believe. If we make a list of what our concerns are and perhaps get them to Mr. Antonella prior to that meeting so that we can discuss it at that time, would that be appropriate?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Just, I'm looking at time constraint and I know we still have a lot to go through. So if we could just do that and then send it on and he can distribute it with the planning board.
Sounds good.
All right, so any questions? Because we're not voting on it tonight. It was just the first reading. Okay?
You
Thank
wanna-
you.
Okay, Lynn has her hand up. I don't know if you wanted to.
We were just gonna we closed our
Leave it?
public
Okay.
hearing and we left it open to the council. So.
Right, I just had something for Anthony, for
Well-
Michael Antonellis. Just that I think you need a definition for what a commercial off-street parking facility is.
I think there
What
is.
does that mean?
It's in the ordinance.
Do we
It's
have a definition?
already in the ordinance?
Yes, we are just changing the use table. The use, this
That's
is,
all that's being changed.
I
So
don't think people
perhaps-
understood that.
Perhaps if we get a copy of the original ordinance prior to the meeting next time, that would help.
but Denise, I think we
Okay.
should continue the public hearing so that we don't have to re-advertise.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
We will continue the public hearing. If someone would make that motion, thank you.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to off-street parking to the meeting on October 22nd or any date thereafter.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mrs. Discussion?
Any other date?
I couldn't hear you.
It should just be October 22nd.
Okay, and then but I'm just wondering if we
Suppose we
don't,
don't meet on the 22nd.
that's why I said that.
So then you'd have to re-advertise it. If you can always re-continue it on the 22nd.
Yeah.
All right, so to the 22nd.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Dillon?
Thank you. Chris Stone,
Aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
Bob Moreau,
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
and Denise DeFranco.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on to the proposed hawkers, peddlers, mobile food establishments, and door-to-door salesperson. I'm opening up that portion of the public hearing. I will note that Mrs. Dillon was spearheading this with the assistance or in conjunction with Julia Cretion. She is on also. She will be fielding the questions in place of Joanna for this particular ordinance. It's a very lengthy ordinance. Julia, do you want to give a synopsis of it?
Sure. So most of what was added was specific to mobile food establishments and what's allowed by the Rhode Island General Laws in Title V, Chapter 11.1. It lays out the requirements, giving the town council the power to grant these grant permits in order to have these mobile food establishments in town. So there are a couple of different types of mobile food establishments. Type A is where the food is prepared or reheated and sold from the food truck. Or there's type B where it sells prepackaged ice cream, so ice cream trucks or Dell's trucks, essentially. And the state requires certain licensing for food trucks, and towns cannot require much beyond that as far as licensing. However, they are allowed to require event permits and temporary mass gathering permits for events that have food trucks. This ordinance goes through all the licensing requirements. I did not change anything to do with hawkers, peddlers, or door-to-door salespeople. That's completely the same as the existing ordinance. I did add in things for mobile food establishment applicants and organizers of the events, because it is up to organizers of mobile food establishment events to obtain event permits and or temporary mass gathering permits, whichever is required by the town council at the hearing, because the council is allowed to put whatever restrictions they want. And an important thing that I think was brought to my attention because of a past issue with a food truck event. Anytime that the town council requires that the town is listed as an interested party on an insurance policy, especially because that prior event had alcohol, the event organizers have to present the deck page with the town listed as an interested party a minimum of 14 days prior, or they lose their anything that they were granted, and they forfeit any application fees paid. But it is a dense ordinance, and I will field whatever questions you guys have.
Thank you. Mrs. Dillon, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you, Julia, for doing this. This is very detailed. I do have a question on the licenses for the hawker, because that is like licenses granted for nonprofit farm co-op agencies. Is that like a farmer's market?
Yes.
Okay, so can we?
It's similar to a farmer's market. One thing that I do suggest is to maybe craft a more detailed definition for that. I don't know if you want to do that, can be a farmer's market, or if it's just like a farm where people are allowed to go and plant and harvest vegetables, fruits, etc. Like it's a plot of land that somebody owns that other people are allowed to do that at. I definitely think nailing down a more definitive definition might help.
Yeah, because a farmer's market to me would be like a somebody decides, hey, I want to do a farmer's market, so I'm going to do it in the front of my business. And how does that all work? You know, so then we have people from the town that grow and harvest their plants, and they sell them there. But they have to be in the town. They have to live in the town. And do they have to get a license with us?
I think if we nail down a more definitive, it's redundant to say definitive definition, but a narrower definition for what these co-ops are versus what you're defining farmers markets as, it would help. But essentially a hawker is somebody who sells either goods or food that they grow, make, create, so from a stationary location. So by doing it at like a booth, that's a hawker by the current definition.
All right, so they would still have to get licensed, correct?
Correct. But the way that the ordinance, I have it written out right now with this co-op, the nonprofit co-op, if we want to include farmers markets as well, the licensing limitations don't apply. So as of right now, I believe it is a max of 3 licenses. There shall be a maximum of 3 annual hawker licenses granted by the town. But that limit doesn't apply to the nonprofit farm cooperatives.
Okay.
So if you wanted to make nonprofit farm cooperatives one thing and farmers markets another, if we work on definitions for that, it could be possible. And then just not have that same limit apply to the farmers markets.
Okay.
That can happen as well.
The other thing I had a question on was, we talked about it earlier, was the Foster Old Home Days and their mobile food establishment, their mobile food trucks that they bring in.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be on the town? Or do they have to license them?
So I don't think speaking about it specifically right now is a good idea because it's not, Foster Old Home Days as a thing is
Well,
not.
that's just if somebody had a fair.
Yeah. So if anything that has, according to this ordinance, anything that has to do with food trucks, you have to get an event permit if you have more than one. So it goes through what's necessary. If you have the food trucks there, they have to have their state license visible. They have to be registered with the town, but you also have to get an event permit that goes through the town council. Temporary mass gathering permits is also something else that the town can require. Those have a little bit more of a strict thing, more strict standards as far as number of people and that type of stuff, which a fair would have more than 500 people, would go on for more than X amount of hours for X amount of days. So with the food trucks, it is possible that you would have to do the event permit and the temporary mass gathering permit for a fair like that.
Right, but I'm just concerned about the mobile food trucks, that's all. They don't have to be registered. We don't have to license them, correct?
Right, because you can't charge another licensing fee on top of what the state charges under state law. Like they have this, you can grant a permit for them to operate in town, but you don't grant them a license because they have to be
That's what I meant, a permit.
Yeah.
So they would need to have a permit.
So it's, and it's like a nominal permit where they show you that they own the truck's licensed under the state, like they have, they meet all the state requirements essentially. You can't require anything above and beyond what the state requires.
Okay, that's true, and I understand that. I just wanted to make sure they could even, if it was a fair and they wanted to go to the council could waive all of these fees. I just wanted to make sure that the town, if this goes through, that that we're giving them the correct permits. It can be no money to them, but to make sure that.
Would this be a conversation to have privately, if you will, where?
Well, I don't know. It's
if it's going to be specific about something, like about a particular event or about something, that would need to be on the agenda so those individuals knew that it was being
so no, I'm just saying, let's just say a fair.
But when it comes to a fair, they still have to come in front of the council. So
Right.
if they're going to have the food trucks, they still have to come in front of the council, and the council can make the rules.
That's
They
great.
can
Okay.
put whatever restrictions, whatever they want on these event permits and say, we'll waive the fee, or
Right.
you need to do this, 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 and this, or you want alcohol too, we need to be on the insurance, and you need to provide it 14 days. A minimum of 14 days is what the ordinance says, so it gives the council a little
Time
bit
to-
more leeway if someone seems to be a little bit less than 100% willing to.
Right, and would we have to advertise this too? Because usually we advertise for a couple, when we do an event. Well, no, we don't advertise.
You don't advertise for,
No, it's when we go to, when you guys, it's
when
like,
we do our liquor licenses,
yeah,
we do that.
but on here, let me just see, there was,
If somebody's going to be serving liquor and you need to give them that liquor license.
no, it's not a license, it's a permit, just the permit to.
The permit to,
For the.
they have fundraisers.
Right. They have right. It's the same thing as a regular town council meeting. They have a right to a public hearing and for you guys to vote and put whatever restrictions you want on their temporary mass gathering permit or their event permit. But it's the same as anyone else who wants to come in front of the council. So once they make their application, you would put them on the agenda. As far as advertising, it's the same rules as anything else.
Okay, that's what I needed to understand.
Cheryl, you had, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Were you still going, Mrs. Dillon?
No, go ahead.
Cheryl, you had your hand raised, or?
Would this apply to anybody that puts up a fruit stand or a vegetable stand at their home?
That's a hawker.
That's a hawker, so.
Yeah, so a hawker is anyone who sells something that they grow, make, so
they would have to get a permit.
Nope, we're talking about, the additions that I made are for mobile food establishments. So they need to get like a hawker's license, which was something that was already established in the ordinance.
Okay.
That hasn't changed.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
what I changed was specific to food trucks.
Okay.
Okay,
You don't
so
need
the
a
public
temporary mass
hearing,
gathering permit.
the public hearing is open. So anybody opposed to the additions and, I don't want to say restrictions, but for the mobile food establishments. Is there anybody who'd like to speak against that? Mrs. Ryder?
Muted.
No,
She
she's not.
she was, okay.
Yeah, go ahead. So this hearing is just for the additions and not about the entire ordinance?
It's just for the mobile food establishments.
So
It's
there were additions made to other parts to make it work, as far as I moved sections around so that it flowed a little bit better. So like licensing requirements got
My only comment would be that if it was about the whole thing, I'm not sure door-to-door salesman is something that should be encouraged in this day and age. And certainly, I mean, for the resident safety and the door-to-door salesman safety, I don't think it should be something that, you know, we even allow. People freaked when, you know, the reval came around, or when the census taker came around. Was not good.
Yeah, I mean, that's been in the ordinance since this ordinance was written. I didn't take anything out. I just altered
That's my only comment.
State law and that type of stuff.
And that can come out.
Yeah, things can come out. If the town council requests that they come out, I take them out.
Gordon, you had your hand, I think, or were you blocking something?
Yeah, the only, I guess, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Which is weird. I know you're not changing it, but correct me if I'm wrong. So everybody who has the cooler out up the driveway selling their farm fresh eggs is supposed to go to the town and get a hawker's permit? That's been actually there?
That's been in the town ordinance.
That's been in there.
That's why I questioned it. Well, that's why I questioned it, Gordon. I couldn't figure that out.
Be careful when you shake
in
those
the
trees.
ordinance. Whether or not it has been enforced, I can't speak to. I just know that it has been in the ordinance.
Yeah. So, you know, when you shake those trees, a lot of things come down.
Yeah.
I'm looking, I saw somebody else. Tammy had a question. I don't know where Tammy is. Oh, there she is. Hi, Tammy.
Hi. I just had a question. In the ordinance for the mobile food trucks, will we be charging the trucks a permit fee and charging an event fee to hold the event?
So, yes. So they have to get their municipal permit. And then there's an event fee, which I did, give me 1 second. I did just email this over. There are limits set out by the Department of Business Regulation for the state of Rhode Island about what these fee limits can be. So the maximum annual municipal permit fee is $775, and then the maximum municipal event or temporary mass gathering permit fee is $300. So temporary mass gathering and event permits come into play when there are certain situations. So there have to be X amount of people that are expected to come out for the event. It has to last a certain amount of time. It has to potentially have some kind of municipal impacts, like if it's going to clog up traffic, or it's going to be a major event bringing other people around. That's to ensure safety, essentially. The organizer of the event is going to be on the hook for the event permit and the temporary mass gathering permit. So if someone's having an event with 4 food trucks, not every food truck's going to have to pay for the temporary mass gathering permit and event permit. It's going to be the organizer. The organizer's on the hook to make sure everyone has their ducks in a row and to pay for the event permit and the temporary mass gathering permit.
And the council can waive that fee.
Correct. Yes. The council has power to waive that fee. The only restriction that the state puts on it is that you can't charge them more than $300 for the event permit or temporary mass gathering permit. You can't charge them more than $75. And then, of course, you can't require them to produce more information than the state does for the state permit.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with a question opposed to or a comment opposed to this ordinance? Okay, anyone in favor?
I don't know what that was.
They were in favor of it. No one, Mrs. Dillon?
No, I'm in favor of it because I have to have that license to.
I know, but I was wondering if there's anybody in the public.
Nobody.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Dillon. That being said, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it to the council. We are not voting on this tonight. We will vote on it on the 22nd. But is there anything that you have questions while we have Julia here?
Just wondering if we should get rid of that hawker's license. I mean, that's a little crazy. Cheryl, don't you?
Yeah,
think?
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say, when you shake that tree, a lot comes down.
I don't know if you want to get rid of it as a whole or keep it, narrow it down a little bit. So it's like
narrow it
the farmer's market and the the co-ops and stuff. And kind of, if it's a smaller situation, I mean, we could talk about it.
I don't know if anybody that's calling on their neighbors selling eggs at the end of the driveway.
Right, I'm wondering, okay, then maybe we should have it in there, but there's no fee for it, or there's no license for it.
I mean, it's not being implemented.
No, it isn't. It isn't, but it can be now if we do it.
Right. Well, you could do it before too, but people just.
No, but now some people like to rat on their neighbors, you know, we have a.
Right, but it's just a change. I think we could just change it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, with this particular one, if you want to look at it, get some things together, get those to Julia and Sue Dillon, and then at the next meeting, we can discuss it.
Wait a minute, somebody's chatting, 1 second. Yep.
All set? Okay. So I will accept a motion
to continue.
I will accept a motion to extend or continue the public hearing to October 22nd.
I will make a motion to continue the public hearing regarding hawkers, peddlers, mobile food establishments, and door-to-door salespersons to the October 22nd Town Council meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Dillon?
Sure, 1 second, just writing that down. Okay, Chris Stone?
Aye.
Heidi Rogers?
Aye.
Bob Moreau?
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes?
Aye.
And Denise DeFranco?
Aye.
Okay, so this goes
Thank you very much. That was a lot in one night.
Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
I'll call you because I have a couple more that I was just looking at, but we can discuss it. All right, thank you.
I'll be in the office tomorrow.
You won't be.
But I can call you.
Thank you. Moving on. The do you mind, Kelly, if we put the planning department on first so then Mike can leave? As far as we have the monthly report presentation, you always.
Because he's gonna stay for the rec anyway.
Oh, he is, okay, fine, thank you. All right, then Kelly, go ahead.
I'm gonna be brief. You're welcome, everybody. So far, just the last month or two, we started a new actuarial evaluation process. We have to update our actuarial report for the OPEB fund or other than pension employee benefits. So together with the school, because we have one fund for both of us, we're updating that. So we're compiling the information. The audit has started and the auditors were here last week. We had 3 auditors over a succession of 3 days. They came and went, and 1 day today. So they're working on planning. They're pretty much wrapping up that. So to segue into that, we're closing our books for 2020. Pretty much we're in the process now. In the next couple of weeks, we should expect to have all of our accruals booked. We're going to stop recording payables and try to get some more solid numbers to process and present them trial balances for the 2020 year. To sum up what looks like for 2020, because it was a big concern, tax collections were low and we were under collected, but what happened in July and August, we are allowed to record those collections that were for the prior year in last year. So we collected about $160,000 or $150,000 in July and August. That will save us for our tax collections for last year. So overall, our tax collections will end up being about $30,000 within budget. So that's not too bad after everything that was said and done. Even our penalties and interest on the tax collections, even with that brief hiatus in that we gave, the extension we gave people to this for that last quarter, we still made our budget for the penalties and interest. So that was good for our taxpayers and good for us as well. The fines and forfeitures were down 14,000, but also that could be COVID related as well, because the police officers were were not really actively writing tickets and stuff like that during that COVID period. But buildings and fees were exceptional. We collected $25,000 more than budgeted, and we're actually doing pretty well with that this year as well. As we expected, we only collected about 75% what we expected for meals and beverages. Luckily, it's not a major major revenue source for us, meals and beverage taxes. But our investment income, because last year before COVID, our interest was great. The economy was doing really well. We received more. So overall, our revenues ended up okay. We probably will be within 100, like we're probably over in a positive way, our revenues by about $100,000. On the other side of expenditures, it was surprising. A lot of that came in July and August, but it's receivable, so it's all good. And on the other side, for the expenditures, we will have a favorable variance in expenditures too, because for a few reasons, we had a great snow season. That saved us about $50,000 to $60,000. Not that this is a good thing, but the planner, building and zoning, and DPW director all had some sort of positive budgetary surpluses due to changes in personnel or just vacancies. For example, we had a zoning official who really hasn't been actively, we haven't been paying since like last December. So there was a lot of overages there. It's beneficial budgetary surpluses. Ambulance corps stipends, we had another 10,000. So overall, from an expenditure standpoint, I want to say we're probably going to be close to 200,000 from a budgetary to actual standpoint. So the gap standpoint, mental accounting standpoint, is totally different. But from what the council usually likes to see from a budgetary to actual standpoint, we will definitely have a surplus last year. To bring that into 2021, as we projected, our tax collections are slower in comparison to last year. We have, we're about 1% back on our real estate, but we're a little bit more than 2.5% on our motor vehicles. But don't forget, we issued our motor vehicle levy late, so people will catch up, and they are going to catch up. We'll reevaluate this again in December when half our year is done, and we can kind of have a better idea. Our meals and beverages taxes are low. Some of our state income is down, but we knew this and we planned for it accordingly in our budget. We have a uncollectible allowance for uncollectibles for state revenue actually built into our budget. So I'm thinking that we could be okay with that. As far as additional COVID expenses that we're incurring, one of the things that Sue discovered was that there is a grant out there available for elections. So we applied for that last week, Sue and I together, and we got that today. We got notice that we got it. So that's $5,000. It will help extra expenses. For example, 20%, $2,500 alone just on plexiglass. We're not even sure that's enough now that we've been told that we have to have 2 polling places, right, Sue?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're not quite sure. Also, it should cover some possible hazard pay, because to ask somebody to stand there for 14 hours or more with a mask on, all is a lot, and we were paying $175, so we might have to increase that. Some extra supplies, the cleaning in between, and etc. So that should cover some of that. So we're happy about that. We have incurred other expenses. A lot of the expenses that we do incur are when employees are out, for example, like a police or dispatcher, police officer or dispatcher, if they're out for COVID-related items or related purposes, and we have to replace them, that's not eligible for FEMA or any kind of reimbursement for replacement hours. So unfortunately, we have some additional costs with that. So that is just a run through of 20 and 21. Well, we are also upgrading our tax collection system. So if you can recall, I don't know if you do, we budgeted $60,000 in capital for our new upgrade for our tax collector system, tax assessment system through Visions. They've been working on this. Patty and Nancy have been working every week. They sit down and have some sort of a Zoom learning experience where they're testing the program and giving feedback. They're in one of the few towns that are doing this and spearheading this. And we are going live with this next week. So hopefully, knock on wood, this goes well. We are the first community in the state of Rhode Island who's going to go live with it. So I think that's going to be interesting. So we'll see. There's
Awesome.
Obviously, the advantage is that they're going to help us quite significantly because they don't really know how well it's going to go. So we have 2 people coming on Tuesday to actually sit with us for the first full day.
That's great.
And the bad thing, obviously, is every snag that's known to man, we're going to hit first. But it's all good, and I'm really proud of Nancy and Patty, and Karen learned the program as well. We all did really, just to try to get it up and running. So that's really good. There's probably more, but it's late, and unless, and then a lot of things on the recreation. We're going to go over the recreation field anyway. Mike and I finished the cash request. We put it in. We're not going to wait any longer. We just put it in. We'll see what the state does. We actually finished we prepared our final report as well. We just can't submit it because it's not complete. The ADA component of it is incomplete. But we wanted it done. So it's done and stored in our computer. The cash request is out there we spent over $520,000 on the project. We're requesting the $4,400 back. Know what they're going to give us because it's not really complete. We still have to spend more for the ADA compliance. So, but we wanted it out there, and we'll see what happens. One of those things, throw it out and see what sticks. So we did that as well. We could go on, but I think that's good. Does anybody have any?
Kelly, with that ball field, wouldn't it be complete because they did not say ADA compliant when the plans were submitted? We did what the plan said.
We did, and that's what Mike and I were going on. Actually, we had this very conversation. And then when we finished the final report, it's actually a component on the final report that the ADA seating and parking is of course, right? Yeah. It's complete and established.
And there's no
to me, I think we would have a leg to stand on. They approved those plans without the ADA, and now they're saying you got to have it.
And it's actually on the final report, that's why we didn't submit it.
Yeah, that's how I found out about it.
Right.
There's no recourse going back to the engineers. I mean, should they have known this?
I would think.
Well, the original engineered plan was
2008.
Yeah, but ADA compliance was back then.
It did. It was. It was. And I guess that's why Mike and you'll see in the next section of this, after Mike's report, that we're going to discuss how to proceed with phase 2. And one of our first plans of action is to contract with an engineer.
Yeah, that was Chris's suggestion. I remember that.
Because we're not going to do this again. Yeah. It's bad in every way.
Thank you, Kelly. Mike, do you want to give your presentation?
Yes, and I'll also keep it brief. It'll probably be more brief than Kelly's. But hello, everybody. Good night.
Hi.
Good evening, I should say. And we'll say good night later.
Good night.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just kind of, well, I'll just run through a couple of things. Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure so far. You know, I started in June, very much enjoying it. Everyone has been great. Everyone in town hall is awesome. It's been a pleasure. You know, just sort of some of the things we've had. I've approved one administrative subdivision. There's been one final subdivision that has been just recorded, Cucumber Hill Estates. The planning board just approved a preliminary subdivision over at Anthony Road last night. That's just one additional lot. Other board business. The board, obviously, there was some board business that got referred to tonight that we were discussing, but other than that, the board is discussing changes to the ordinance relative to prohibited uses. So that's ongoing discussion that the planning board has been having. Bob's been looped in on that, obviously, as he's the key into the planning board through the council. Liaison is the word I was looking for. So there was a recommended zone change, which I believe we'll be hearing. The council will be hearing next meeting, October 20, the next meeting, whatever. Yeah, October 22nd. And that was for Route 6. That was Partners Auto. So you'll be seeing that. Obviously, you've already heard about it, but that was recommended to you and sent off as a report from the planning board. Other things, more longer term things, what was fortunate is that Jennifer left really good notes when she left. So, you know, sort of those longer term projects I'm working on getting GIS parcel updates to get our GIS records up to date. So I'll be working on that over the next couple weeks, getting that over to, I think the company's called Hilltop, is the company that works on that on our behalf. Had a couple calls about compassion centers since I've started. Nothing outrageous, just a couple of folks, representatives from companies asking, you know, what the zoning is and all that sort of stuff. Nothing seemed imminent or very serious at this time, but thought you might be interested to hear that. It's only been like 2 or 3 calls since I started. We'll start the bridge and roads plan next year. The comp plan. So that was, the comprehensive plan is something that I immediately started looking at when I got here. The state sent back significant notes. I think it was early of 2019 when they sent that along. So that is going to take a while to get through those notes that the state sent back on. One of the biggest things on that is the data is outdated at this point, and they are requesting you know, the most up-to-date data be provided on that plan. That presents a challenge. The number one challenge with that is that the census has completely changed how they present data. And what the frustrating and difficult part about that is that data then needs to be reorganized and just to match the new data. So it's going to take a lot of work just to get back to the tables, graphs, charts, or whatever was put into the original comp plan to look at, you know, even it's just the categories have changed. Even if you're just looking at straight demographics, you know, if they're just, they're measuring from, if it's, you know, 5 to 18, it's changed from like 5 to 21. That's just an example. It's not really what they changed it to, but like, that's just an example of how then that data needs to be reorganized. So that'll take a while to sift through and actually get to. And then there was other, you know, the changes are non-substantive. I'd say just, they didn't seem like they took issue with And I don't know how much you went over this prior when you received those notes, but they didn't seem like there was a lot of issues with noted goals and stuff like that. So everything seemed to be, I guess, approvable, but we got to get it to the approvable level. So it'll take some time. I'm trying to make that my priority in between, the deadlines that I'm supposed to meet with applications and stuff like that. So
Well,
working
thank
on
you.
that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then obviously I've been working on the ball fields, but we can talk about that next. But I'll leave it at that. Just kind of a general overview of everything I've been working on. And well, there's certainly more things, but those are the highlights.
Thank you, Michael. Going on to old business, recreation field updates, phase 1 completion, how to proceed. Oh,
Yeah, right.
I don't even know what to say. It's okay. I'm not going to say anything.
Awful.
My mother always says, if you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything. So I'm not going to say anything. Okay, so we need to complete it, as Kelly and Mike have mentioned, and Chris has been going on. How do we proceed? We have to do this ADA parking. And I guess the mats and getting them to the seats, to the benches. In our packet, there's some quotes, I guess, for how to get that part of it done.
Concrete one's outrageous.
Yeah. I mean, one is for a complete, but we didn't do an RFP or a bid. I don't want to mention any numbers here.
Right.
But we didn't go out for an RFP or on this particular portion of it. It was not, if I'm correct, the whole problem is that it was not part of the initial RFP. So now we need to have that. So do we send out a separate RFP for the ADA compliance?
We may have to. I've got to call into a local contractor to see what his guesstimate would be of what the concrete would cost. And I may call another guy. So until we get those guesstimates, I would say that we don't do anything.
So this basically, Chris, is pouring concrete ramps.
Well, no, they're not ramps. No, it's a
Or sidewalks with a pitch that a wheelchair can get up to get into the field or get to the
actual parking spots.
Parking spot. It's part of the parking spot.
The actual ADA parking spots.
Yeah.
Because what's there now, correct me if I'm wrong,
not
what's there
acceptable.
now is not
Acceptable.
friendly.
ADA compliance.
Right. It's not
Correct.
user friendly for someone in a wheelchair, etc.
Right.
Because it's that gravelly stuff. So it's hard to maneuver.
So it's about the material. So it needs
The material making,
concrete.
yeah.
The
And this
only
is nothing-
problem I have with getting quotes like this is if you intend to go out for an RFP and you've obtained all these personal quotes, it may undermine your eventual,
Right.
you're getting a quote for less than 5,000.
All right, so you just want to go out for a quote?
I'm just, honestly, the reason
Then you got to award it to somebody.
the reason you could use J is because it's considered a change order for the original, even TAM
I
has.
know, but Jay won't call me back even.
It's a problem. The only other thing we could do is that's why we provided you quotes for another option instead of just simply doing the concrete pads, paving the entire parking lot. That creates your handicap parking.
And then you just have the wider spaces, right?
Yep.
That are marked
Yes,
handicap.
then they could line it and measure it. We would help them with that. DPW said, Kippy said that he could do the concrete pad underneath the bench. And we are buying the portable pads for the walkways.
So if he can do the concrete under the benches, then why can't he do the concrete under the cars?
It's a lot less significant in size and like needs, I think.
Gordon, you moved. All right, Gordon.
His battery died. He just invaded my space.
So sorry about that. My battery died downstairs. The meeting's a little longer than I could handle with my battery. This really is something that we could possibly handle in-house. I mean, it's pretty easy. You can figure out how much concrete's going to take. So it's simply length times width gets you square footage. 4 inches thick divided by 81. That's your yardage. Scrape it out, trowel it out. And this should something that could be easily done in-house to our DPW guys. This is not a major thing. It's fairly easy. And I think the knowledge with the guys that we got with a little bit of leadership can get this done in-house, no problem at all, and save a lot of money.
Mike, thoughts?
Thank you, Kelly.
If they need help, I can assist them.
Mr. Antonellis, do you have something to say?
All I was going to add is, and not in response to Gordon specifically, but I spoke with Jay. With both, the two options that were presented tonight was going with De Silva Construction, and you have a copy of his proposal in front of you. I confirmed with him that he can complete all the work on it. This is what he told me, and I asked him specifically, when can this work be completed by the end of this month, and he said it could. So that's what we're looking at with that.
At that price.
That was Jay.
That was
Yes.
Jay at that price.
At that price.
How about the infield?
All of it, Chris.
All of it. All of it.
It seems to be linked every time we have a conversation. Don't you agree? That like the start and finish of a completion of this work is everything hinges. I don't know if it's hinging, but we don't really get much of a response unless we're talking about the new work, correct, Mike?
What do you mean by that? Do you mean like the new work?
I'm talking about as far as like fixing the infield and the walkway around. We don't really get much feedback from when that's going to occur unless we're discussing the entire.
Who are you not getting feedback from?
Right.
I don't understand who. No, I don't understand what you're saying. We don't get much feedback from who?
Jay, I mean, we're not getting much response, a positive response as far as when that's going to occur. It always seems to be linked with when
phase
work is approved.
Okay, so I'm looking at his quote here that he gave us, the estimate and the bottom line. And you're saying that includes the infield?
No, I'm saying I don't know when he's going to fix the infield if it's not for when he's doing the rest of the work. Because whenever we ask for one,
so he wants, okay.
It seems to be linked. He'll come out and finish everything all at once.
Yeah. I had asked when he provided that invoice or estimate that he detail the things that he would be coming back to do,
I don't see
free
the
of charge.
infield listed.
I don't either.
Yeah, it wasn't, but
listed on this.
that's what I was getting at is that he didn't list it on that, but I did press him on, and I probably have it in an email. I did press him on completing the work that still needs to be completed. That being the infield, that being the washout on the walkway in left field. If you've been up to the site, when we get that heavy rain, it washed out like an entire section of that. It's really bad.
Yep.
Now the trees, Mike.
And then the trees.
There's a couple of trees that are dead, yeah.
There's 4.
Yeah. So I had asked, last I had talked to him, and this is what I mean, with not only the completion of the ADA requirements, but all of that outstanding work, if it could be completed by the end of this month, and he said yes.
At that price.
At that price. The other option was the pavement
Right.
from Allstate that you're looking at. And
But we would still have to go out with an RFP for either, looking at Allstate. Heidi, you're
You're
muted.
muted, Heidi.
Oh, I was just saying it would be a change order for Jay, but it would be an RFP for anybody else,
Right.
which would take a lot more time. It wouldn't get done by the end of the month.
Well, Allstate already is the company that's why he got the quote from Allstate.
yeah.
They're doing the roads.
Mhm.
Oh, so are they a
We already
subcontract?
went out for an RFP and we already hired, right. It would just really be like another additional thing for them as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
why
not-
we're looking at these two options, because
That's what I'm
that
looking
gets
for.
us completed before the end of this year, hopefully. So that's why we
Okay.
were looking at this.
We don't know what to do. It's
And Joanna, stop me if I'm saying something I shouldn't, but if we say we go with the other option of paving, what if he turns around, Mr. De Silva turns around and says, well, then I'm not coming out and fixing everything out? Do we think that's a possibility? Since it only seems to be that he only wants to discuss if we're doing, and I'm
We're
looking
paying
at
him money.
his, right, but I'm looking at
All he
his
wants to
quote,
discuss is if we're paying him money.
and we haven't paid him everything yet, Kelly.
Yes, we did, because if you recall, we gave him the option for the, what was that, insurance policy, Joanna?
We have a bond. We have a bond, right?
But it was only
Expired.
until June, and it was for dead trees and
It was for that
vegetation.
grass and all that other stuff. Yeah.
That's the least of our problems.
So now I'm looking at his quote for what he's going to do, and I'm looking at the other quote for what they're going to do. I mean, if we've got these two options, huh?
Any way you look at it, because keep in mind, neither of those options includes the bench or the
Right.
walkway.
Right. So I mean, they're both expensive.
Yes.
But with one, we're getting a whole parking lot and ADA compliance. And the other one, we're getting ADA compliance. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct. And I just say with Allstate, you're getting that parking lot in coordination with DPW efforts to do the rest of the ADA requirements to get us to get approval on that. So that's sort of like a tandem effort with Allstate. Is he would be coming in doing the pavement, and then we'd have DPW do the other improvements that are necessary. When with De Silva, I don't want to say it's all in one. It's because it's obviously not the entire parking lot. It's that the spaces only, plus the other ADA requirements that are necessary, plus the things he I guess said and should be doing for free because we've already paid for them, sort of thing. The walkway and the infield and all the other ancillary items that need to be corrected.
Could we do a change order for De Silva for just the ADA things and not the lot? So that way we incentivize him to come out and fix everything, but we still get the whole lot from the other.
Well, that's a lot.
He isn't giving us the lot. De Silva is not giving us the lot. He's only giving us parking spots.
Yeah,
spaces.
Take away most of what he's doing and just have him do like smaller things.
How? Like, what would we take away? They're all tied into.
Well, the prepping for concrete walk and seating area is
Yeah.
something that Kippy said he could do.
Right.
The biggest thing is from what I'm reading here, is form and install rebar, install wire mesh and sidewalk, pour and finish concrete in parking area, saw cut control joints in concrete parking area. And that's something, I don't know where Gordon is now. Gordon feels that DPW can do?
I don't know.
Absolutely, that could be done
Oh,
by.
gosh, you
DPW.
pop up out of nowhere.
That should all be in the print, should be the gauge of the wire mesh. It just sets down there. They set them in chairs, the rebuy there. And the saw cut, I'm sure we have a demo saw you can simply rent from any concrete Lowe's or anything has the concrete cutting saws. I've cut floors before. That's just expansion joints. So when the concrete does crack, it cracks inside the saw cuts and you don't see it. It's all simple construction stuff that these guys, if they don't, they should learn because it only benefits them in the future on any jobs that we should be able to do in-house.
Chris, are you comfortable talking to Kippy about this, seeing if he can?
I can call him and ask him. I don't think he's enthusiastic about it, but.
Thought you said he wasn't returning your calls, but he is.
No, that's
That's
Kippy.
Jay.
Jay,
Kippy returns
Oh,
it.
Kippy. Oh,
Kippy. Jay doesn't return the calls.
Late,
Kippy does.
Cheryl.
sorry.
But what would Jay?
I mean, I'm just looking at both costs. They're both a lot, but to me, you're getting more with one.
Yeah.
But I just don't want.
The issue with the paving is he's not gonna complete the walk part of it. So they're gonna have to do the walk part anyway.
But didn't you say we're getting max
And the
portable?
paving, I don't know if they can hold the 2% grade.
Oh. Oh. Okay.
They're both.
I want to say something because I just feel like my head's gonna explode.
And the fact that it's October isn't really helping us.
No.
Waited
No.
and waited
Yeah.
and waited and waited. We've been
Absolutely.
waiting, honestly, since last December or before. And enough is enough. It's 10 months of waiting. We have to figure something out. And if we don't,
Good idea.
soon, we're going to be in the spring. We're going to be in the spring and the job won't be complete.
Right. Anybody got an idea out there? Council?
Somehow we have to get that Jay back to finish what the heck he owes us.
Right.
Owes us.
That's a whole nother issue.
Well, right.
He's been talking to Mike, so I think we should let Mike handle it.
I think, right.
Because he doesn't return my calls.
That was where I was going before. Right.
Mike seems to have a rapport with him.
Mike, what do you think? Do you have a?
Are you comfortable with that?
Well,
I had two questions going.
I didn't hear
Which question am I
Go
answering?
ahead, Cheryl.
I said, do you have any idea of how to work this out? I mean, should we try to work with Jay? Should we try to make sure he's going to come and finish?
I mean, it's such a tough spot to be in. It's because because we're up.
Mike,
was gonna say
I don't
we're-
think Mike gets paid enough to handle.
Probably not, but.
Well, the thing is, we're concerned, like, he's talking to Mike because of because we have another project. At what point?
Right.
Once
Yes.
Mike told him, like, the last correspondence was we were going to talk about it tonight and vote on it, so he knew how to proceed.
Yes.
Mike goes back and says, we have nothing else solved. I don't think Jay's going to consider that there's anything else to talk about. I'm not.
No, I know. But I just feel like we're being held over a barrel.
What I was gonna say is that what I like, what I don't like about Jay's proposal, obviously, is the cost of it. But what I like about the idea of going with Jay is that he's had the engineering done. We had the engineering specs from the engineers that he's been using that got approved through the state. So that's what we're using. He's the guy who produced that work that would hopefully be doing this work. So it's like, if the work gets done, it's a guarantee that we'd be in good shape. My concern is that does the work get done?
Right. That's my concern.
But, and that's, it's so hard to have a crystal ball and predict that. I mean, I'd love to be able to say, yeah, and that's why I tried to hold his feet to the fire a little bit and say, if we go with you, can you get this done by the end of the month? He said yes.
Well, is there anything that we can put in writing that holds his feet to the fire? And then that gives us something to go after him if he doesn't do it.
Can we go with the contract for him to do
Yeah,
this, including a legal binding contract
Right.
saying you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and you're also gonna fix the other stuff.
Right.
And my second question, Kelly, where's this money coming from?
We're just gonna make it from payment in lieu. I looked it up tonight. We have 42,000 left. We have
Crazy.
42,000 in it.
So that's for phase one. That won't go towards phase two?
This is really not, it's not an allowable expense for phase two. The engineer that we're gonna talk about next, that's an allowable expense for phase two. And I would like to talk about two briefly, with Jay's bid. I mean, not bid, really, his quote included $5,600 for an engineer. Like
Yeah, I
that,
saw that. Why?
because he had the whole thing engineered by this person that we had no, and I'm not saying he didn't do a good job. I'm saying I think he did a very good job. But $5,600 when we're looking at $7,500 up to update the entire plan for phase two seems a little excessive for this.
A parking lot, yeah, a parking
Well,
spot.
honestly, and that's something that he took upon himself. I don't know if we would have
Right.
contacted with somebody for $5,600.
Well, do you see an actual bill though? Like it's on his bill, but
It's on his bill, but if we go with him, we're subject to that payment, I'm assuming.
But
Yeah,
well,
but why can't we see
I hear
his
what
bill?
Joanne's saying, yeah.
yeah, I want to see the engineer's bill. Who is the engineer? And actually, because I mean, he can put it on here, but does he have evidence that that's actually
been done?
Right.
Do
Well,
we
he
have?
came a few times, right, Mike? We met with him several times when he came. Whenever we met with Jay, he would come.
Yeah.
The-
Yeah, it was
the
Casali Group,
engineer?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I could walk in with Jay and say I'm an engineer.
who was the
No,
engineer?
he is an engineer, actually. Because we, of course.
Casali.
Oh, it was Casali. Yeah, I mean, he is expensive, but
I just,
did anybody actually see the bill though?
no, not only did we not see the bill, the whole time that Chris and Mike and I met with him, we were wondering who was going to pay for this engineer and at what point that this was going to happen, because we never really contracted with him. So if we don't go with Jay, he's still going to submit us a bill for the engineer? I'm not sure.
Yeah, because
We didn't request it.
Yeah, Jay didn't have the.
The state did want it.
Right, but that doesn't mean we requested it from him.
Exactly.
I agree with Joanna. Show us the bill.
Jay didn't have the authority to hire somebody on the town's behalf.
Right, he hired him for himself. So, I mean, if we're gonna go with him, I'd like to see that bill for $5,600.
And
And maybe that's something we could also negotiate in this quote.
Yeah, if you're gonna pick Casali for phase two, I bet you could.
We're not going to pick Casali for phase two, most likely, because
Seems very expensive.
Crossman Engineering did the original plans.
Right.
And we asked for him to look at the plans and update it with all of these additional things in mind, electricity, like porta johns, water, wells, like everything. And he gave us a quote for $7,500 to update his original plan.
That's the other thing. If somebody was gonna be engineering this thing for the parking lot, it should have been the person who was the original engineer.
Should have been the person who was the original engineer. He should have been consulted first.
Because Steve, I mean, Steve Cabral, that's also who we're using on the DM. Like his prices are I mean, Joe Casali's a great engineer, but he does big projects. That's why his prices are.
Right.
This is not a big project.
No, I'm not judging his work or anything. It's just that was part of the 36,000.
Okay.
600 for that engineer. Maybe we can.
All right, so what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We have to make a decision. We can't be keeping this, I mean, honestly, we have one more meeting that we can make any decisions at, because then it's the election and then we can't do anything for a charter until the swearing in December.
Denise, what did Joanna say about a contract? If we agreed with this next 36,000, did she say that we could write up a contract that would include all of these things?
Joanna, did you say that?
I didn't say, I think another question was asked, so I didn't respond. It gets, the issue is you're not putting out an RFP, it's just a change order. So we would have to do an addendum to the prior contract that I don't think we have.
We don't have one.
Right.
So
But can we, so it's not legal to, contract with him to do this additional work for a specific time period? Meaning like if you don't complete this by November 15th, penalty?
Well, my opinion is don't pay him until,
Right.
if you try to make a contract now, but we've not put it out for an RFP, then is it really a change order or is it a new project? So
Right.
that's if we already had a contract, we could just make an addendum to that contract, but we do not have one. So I would think that you would withhold payment and that on the change order, it would say, it's not cash on delivery, but your payment terms would be
okay
on completion.
Okay, so we have something in writing.
Something.
To move forward.
That's everybody's main concern is that we're going to go forward with this and it'll be just,
Right.
we still don't have it done.
You know, he gave us this estimate in September 23rd. All right. What's the pleasure of the council? Do you have a pleasure?
I would make the motion that we go with Jay on this bid.
Second.
Okay, so it's, a motion has been made and seconded.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Chris did.
Thank you.
Bob made the motion, Chris
I got
seconded.
it.
Discussion.
I think the only discussion is that we do withhold payment until this is complete. I
Yeah.
don't know what's wrong, Mike. I sounded wrong.
And we don't, can we also withhold payment until those corrections are made?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think you should ask for the engineer's bill, the true copy of the bill.
Right.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
But the other things that needed to be fixed on the field, can we talk about, can we withhold payment until that stuff is done?
What I would do is I would put that in the change order so that so that this is the work that we're paying for, include it.
Okay.
That's why I was trying to get him to put it on the quote.
Right.
Right.
Who's writing up this change order?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Who's going to write the change order?
Go like this, Joanna. Come right back. We have to get this right this time.
Yeah.
Can you
any screw ups this time?
Send me like a
Yes. We have all kinds of emails and correspondence stating exactly what needed to be done. Mike has corresponded with him so many times, listing in detail everything that we've gone over that had to be done. So we can just forward that to you, right, Mike? Mike's
Yeah,
got
Kelly, let's you and I work on that on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And Chris, if you have anything.
I'll add whatever you.
And Chris, if you have anything.
On all those emails too.
Yeah. Mike,
Okay, Mrs. Dillon, you want to take a roll call?
I would love to. Chris Stone,
aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
Bob Moreau,
Aye.
Denise DeFranco.
Aye.
Thank you.
Get that sucker.
Okay. Engineering for phase 2. So my question is, we have quotes here. Did we go out for an RFP?
We didn't go out for an RFP because, to be honest with you, you should always go back to the first engineer who did the plan and ask for an update from them. That's for, because Mike Casale, was it Mike Casale?
Joe.
Joe.
Casale was working on, helped Jay.
Yeah.
While we were working with him, Mike sent out an email saying, we talked about, and he sent out an email saying, asking for a price for an update. But we also wanted to go back to, because that is industry standard, you go back to the person who created the original plan first. And we gave you both bills to see the difference. One off his own plans, and he has faith in what he did. He knows what the procedures are. Whenever you, it's true for an accounting firm or any kind of, you have to rely
I get that.
It's always going to be more money. So
I assumed Casali would have had more background information already ready to go from doing the plans for the ADA. So I was a little surprised to see that his proposed bill was so high, because that's why I originally asked him, because he was already working on the ADA plan. So and with Kelly's logic, that's why I went to him. And then after we got that quote, that's when I reached out to Crossman, I think it is.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep. So both are over are you saying because Crossman was the original engineer, we don't have to go
Yes.
out to bid? We can just,
That's the premise I'm going with, and I did discuss this quickly with the auditor, and she said that's normal to like you would use the person you originally used.
so we wouldn't have to go out to an RFP,
I don't know if
Joanna?
Joanna, unless you're gonna say something different.
No, I think I think if you were gonna go with Casali, you probably would have
Exactly,
to.
yeah.
Not if you're staying with your original person.
Well, if we were going with Casali, we need.
Somebody,
Rocks. We have rocks in our skull.
We would be redoing the whole town. Okay.
We'd be voted out.
All right, so do we have, and I do like, I mean, personally, I like Steve Cabral. But I also like the fact that he said, in addition, he noticed some other things that weren't picked up on. I like that. I mean, you know, he's doing his work.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion?
So you confused me. You said Cabral.
Yes, Cabral is with Crossman.
He works for Crossman? Okay.
Yeah, Steve Cabral is
I make a motion, we go with Crossman to upgrade the phase 2
Plan.
engineering.
drawing with Crossman Engineering.
Bob Moreau.
Bob?
Further discussion?
I see.
Hearing none. Mrs. Dillon.
Chris Stone?
Aye.
Heidi Rogers?
Aye.
Bob Moreau?
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes?
Aye.
Denise DeFranco?
Aye.
Oh, Brady.
Thank you. Almost there. Responsibility of scheduling teams and equipment storage. I invited Tammy on. To be honest with you, I thought we discussed this during the budget workshops, that we would increase Tammy's, and I can't remember whether we did, increase Tammy's, we didn't.
No, because of COVID, when we cut.
COVID hit, and not only that, we never really actually came up with, it was just a preliminary discussion, and then it was never really settled, and COVID hit, and that was the end of it. And then as far as the equipment goes, it's because the mound, we either have to build something there or we have to have a plan, because
Tammy, where is the mound now?
Supper shed.
It's okay.
So when did it get moved to the supper shed?
It was only missing for like 3 days when they used it. It was stored away and then brought back that following Friday.
They didn't know where to bring it back to. So
I'm not judging that he took it. It's not that. It's just that we need a plan, like a comprehensive plan.
I know we need
Tammy, didn't you talk about building a shed or something?
Well, I mean, we decided we could help look into something to keep it stored in, and it should be stored at the field. Dave Terrell is willing to make a cart to roll it in and out, but I'm not sure what type of outbuilding we would store it in.
Well, I talked to Kippy about this, and it's a big, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but I was there when they unloaded it. It came in a big, huge bodied truck, and it was the only thing in the body of the truck. Very big.
It's solid.
It's solid. It's difficult to move, and it's very difficult to get on and off the field because of.
So why don't we just leave it there?
That was what Kippy said. Leave it in the field. There's like, he could even try to do something that you could put like some sort of a thing in it that you could chain it to the linked fence or something like that, and then people could see. But to keep moving it back and forth like that, it's eventually going to damage the constantly.
Chris, what did you want to say?
You have to roll it.
You know, it's a big. The mound is big.
It's big,
and it's not something you're going to take off the field. in order to, you gotta lift it upright to get it through the gate.
Right. So you have to almost roll it. So Kippy was saying that by doing that over and over and over again, you're eventually.
Yeah, I understand that. I would agree with that.
And it
Tammy,
is
what were you gonna say?
$2,500, so
Well,
we don't-
Dave
1 minute.
Terrell has agreed to make a cart that will pull it in and out of whatever outbuilding we store it at. So it wouldn't be like being rolled out. He wants to build something to move it in and out. But the reason that it can't stay on the field is because the reason we bought it is so that baseball and softball could use it, and it needs to move when softball uses the field.
But Kippy was saying where home plate is, over to the left-hand side in the corner, it could go there and it wouldn't be in anybody's way.
But it's in the baseball field.
It's in the field off to the left, so unless somebody like.
Yeah, but it's in play. That's in,
Yeah.
When you
it
play
would be
baseball,
a-
that's in
it'd be a
play.
foul ball. I mean, like.
Yeah, but all you need is one.
I think we can look at it though, instead of constantly moving it in and out and trying to find a place where we're gonna have a, temporarily, where we're gonna have a portable, we don't know where we're gonna have a shed or anything like
Bleachers or
that. Like,
something there?
No, that's the problem. There's no building there.
No, bleachers or somewhere it could go under when it's not in use. I
the
wasn't sure
bleachers are
about that.
outside of the field, Heidi, and there's only like, it's like this wide. And
All right, so there's no room. I was just thinking like under bleachers.
it's not
when
like high school bleachers, covered bleachers or anything.
Yeah,
like
okay.
that.
Heidi, you got to picture this thing. It's like 8 feet around. It's huge.
Could we look at it in the field over in the corner or something like that, so it doesn't have to be moved like that? Because right now we don't have, I mean, even going back and forth to the supper shed is just.
Well, that it shouldn't go that far. It should be an outbuilding on the property where on a cart where it can be moved in and out. But if you store it on the baseball field, like foul balls are in play. So you're going to have to like have an obstacle in your way when you're trying to play the baseball game.
Well, let's look at the measurements and look at it and actually go to the field and see where Kippy was suggesting that we could keep it. See if that is feasible. If it is, then you've solved a problem for now. If it's not, then we have a temporary problem that we don't have storage.
But we still, wouldn't we, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Are we gonna have a concession stand there?
That's part of the new engineers, a plan that where more feasible. Right now, where the concession stand is, it's literally right by where the idea was. It's literally right where the porta johns have to be.
I'm just wondering if it could be designed, I don't know how big it's going to be, the concession stand. I'm wondering if it could be designed in such a way that the mound could be underneath it. Is it going to be up on something? Is it going to be a wooden floor? I'm just curious as if it could be made to accommodate that underneath it. How high is the mound?
So what if, so, okay, so we've got a couple of options. Go ahead, Chris.
It's 6 inches high.
Oh, so if you had
So it's thin.
So if it was a decent sized concession stand and it was up, is there a space underneath it that it could be stored? Could we design it that way so it could be stored instead of building a separate?
Probably could design something on the back of the building.
Yeah. That it could go in?
You can have
How
more
do you get it
equipment
into
than
the
that
building?
to store.
How do you get it in?
Yeah. And
How do
aren't
you
you
get
gonna
it in?
have more equipment than that to store?
Yes.
Right.
And I agree with Heidi, it should be flat. So I liked the idea of underneath because you don't want to constantly have it on its side. Eventually that's going.
But having it,
The concession stand on like a cement slab or something, if there was just a space underneath. if
We're
it could
probably a
be
year from that though, Heidi.
Yeah.
So, all right, so my thinking now, and I know nothing about baseball, softball, mounds, or anything, storing this, winter's coming, it's getting cold. Is this going to be affecting the integrity of this thing?
No.
Frost and, no, okay. All right, so for now, there's no more softball or baseball being played, am I correct?
Yeah, they're still playing.
Oh,
They're still playing.
never mind. Okay.
Oh,
But they're not, the people that are using this field are practicing.
So I
So
don't,
can the mound just
Start
stay there for
games on
now?
it.
Can the mound just stay there for now and come spring, we have ideas?
Mound is in the supper shed. They're not using the mound at the field.
Okay, so can the mound stay in the supper shed until spring?
Right.
I don't see why not.
And then we come up with an idea for that.
Then what are we
In the
talking about
meantime.
it for? It's
I-
a supper shed, it can stay
I
there.
was gonna
all
ask that,
day.
Cheryl.
Okay, so it stays in the supper shed and come spring, whoever discusses it.
Well, we're gonna need a place for all the equipment, so
Right.
that's when we should probably.
So when you do the concession stand, like up at, Dr. Bonds is on, but up at the high, well, that's still the high school. Up at the high school, the concession stand, they store things for cross-country in there.
Yeah,
I'm
I get
assuming
it.
they have things for base,
Yeah.
for football, et cetera. I mean, I don't know. I know they have a separate.
I think we could design it in a way where it would accommodate that. If we
Right.
planned to do it that way, instead of building some separate structure just to
Right.
store this thing.
As
Have
long as it's
something.
protected
I
now.
mean, we're having
Okay.
this plan engineered. It's important to know
So-
what we want to do.
so the-
because the original concession.
now it's
stand
gonna
is not
stay-
that big.
Right now, it's gonna stay in the supper shed. When we look at the concession stand, maybe we put a little caboose at the end or something where it can store equipment.
We'll
Yeah.
ask the engineer if he has
Right.
any ideas. Because right now, I think the concession stand isn't that big. So to say you want to store something inside.
Right,
of-
I'm just saying in addition,
Okay.
that's why I say maybe a caboose.
Okay, we're not gonna solve this issue
No,
tonight. So let's,
so let's talk
let's
about
go back to
responsibility of
scheduling.
scheduling the teams. So as I said, I thought we discussed this at the budget workshops, that we would have, hi, Dr. Bonds, we would have Tammy doing the scheduling, because having it scheduled out of town hall is like ridiculous, because they want to do it on weekends and they got, et cetera. Mrs. Dillon's got her hand up.
Thank you. I talked to Tammy today, and I think when your kids play ball, you usually get your agenda, like your
Schedule.
schedule. Thank you, Tim. On at the very beginning, you say these are the places where you're going to play, so you know, and this is where you're going to practice. So I think that them doing that through the town hall is not a problem. We can do that. I don't know when they call for like a rain date. Usually I know our rain dates used to go at the bottom of the list, and then they would call to say, are there any availabilities for this week here? I don't have a problem doing it. I told Tammy I could send her an email with the calendar on it when baseball season starts on Thursday night, so she has it and she knows who's there.
Well, I mean, I think recreation is recreation is recreation, and the scheduling is recreation. But if you want to do it and Tammy's fine with that too, then I don't know why we have it on the agenda.
Well, we just talked to her. I just talked to her today, and that's what we were talking about. The agenda was made on Tuesday.
Okay.
So,
So-
Tim, you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, that seems fine. And, I would just have to reach out to you if there were any differences in what we have stated,
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, we
Right
can
now,
try
they've
that, see if
been,
it
they've been
works.
contacting me. And I know there's nothing else scheduled there, so we just told them they could use the field.
Yeah, we just think that the scheduling conflict will come into play when the three sports want to use it, the AAU baseball, Little League, and then girls softball.
Yeah.
And then Chris should not be in. So Chris, you can say, call town hall.
Right,
Okay.
good
Out
idea.
of curiosity, can any of these people practice at Woody Loudon?
Or they should
Little
be.
League, Little League can. Little League can at this point,
I
unless
have
we make some
nothing to do with
adjustments.
Foster Situate Little League, so I can't answer that.
Right.
Mrs. Dillon.
So what happens right now with the field being like really rocky and a kid slides on it, rips open their leg, and we're not even, it's not, complete. How would we handle that? Should we
I don't know how we
have
handle
it
it.
I was
posted?
surprised that they were using it because of that reason.
I don't think they
They
know.
said
man. I
this-
don't know.
They've said the surface is not that bad, according to them.
Well, I didn't know if we should put a sign up saying it's
You
not
play at your own risk.
your own risk, and then you're not
Well,
responsible.
we probably should do that anyway, right, Joanna?
I don't know that that sign is gonna protect you.
Well, forget it then, Joanna.
It's
more
more
comforting for the person who wrote it
same,
and the person who
the
read
same
it.
stuff.
All right, I'm going to move on to new business.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion.
Appointment to the Board of Canvassers.
Bye, Mike. You
Would
stay.
you like me to read?
Oh,
the-
goodbye, Mike. Thank you. Have a nice
Good night.
long weekend.
Thanks, Mike.
You too. All right.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everyone. Have a good
Bye.
one. Bye.
So,
Denise.
we had the resignation of a Board of Canvassers member who was representing the Democrats.
Correct.
We have to replace that. Mary Jo Creation has been submitted a letter. Bobby DiPaolo checked with John Restivo. John Restivo says it's okay. So I see Mary Jo was on, maybe she's a,
No, she's still there.
Oh, she's still
what
on.
a trooper. You hung in there, Mary Jo.
That's
Wow.
all right. I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Mary Jo. How
Yes.
are you?
Hi.
What
She
a
was the
trooper,
alternate.
sticking through all of this. So, pleasure of the council.
Mary Jo has served as an alternate before. I would like to make a motion to appoint Mary Jo Creation as a full member of the Board of Canvassers.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. We had two. Further discussion.
Great.
Mrs. Dillon.
Sure. Chris Stone,
Aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
Bob Moreau,
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
and Denise DeFranco.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations,
Mary
Mary
Jo.
Jo. Thank you.
Thank you, I suppose.
Take care. Good night.
Good night. You're right where I want to be.
Oh, I'm not in bed. This isn't bad.
So we now have the appointment of an alternate Board of Canvass member and to take Mary Jo's position. And there's Christina Chicheria. Is she on yet? I don't see her. And she too, Mr. DiPaolo approached Mr. Restivo, and Mr. Restivo had no objections.
I will make a motion to appoint Christina DiChiera as an alternate member of the Board of Canvassers.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Dillon.
Chris Stone,
Aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
Bob Moreau,
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
and Denise DeFranco.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the open session. We will be going to executive session. I will take a 2-minute pause, so if anybody needs to do anything.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yes,
like
and
me
sticking
to?
through this. I appreciate it.
Oh, you want to take the break before I read the motion for executive session?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, please
I'm gonna
take it.
Okay, I move to go into executive closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5 for the discussion of, hold on, gotta find it on here. Litigation. Potential litigation pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A, 2 litigation, and Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A, oh, again, for litigation, potential litigation.
Second.
Oh, wait, and to reconvene into open session and to further keep the minutes of said meeting closed and the minutes of all executive sessions held previous to this meeting be closed and remain to provisions of the general laws of Rhode Island 42-46-4 and 5.
Second.
Thank you. Chris Stone,
Aye.
Heidi Rogers,
Aye.
Bob Moreau,
Aye.
Cheryl Hawes,
Aye.
and Denise DeFranco.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending, and 2 minutes if
Do you-
anybody has to do anything.
Do you want Mike to stay?
I don't think there's a need for Mike to stay, Joanna.
I believe that they are represented by counsel, so I would be weary for him to.
That's what I thought.
Well,
That's what I thought too, so. Thanks for sticking in here, Dr. Bonds.
You've been hanging out with us all this time.
All I would say is if you do, if there's anything you like, any information you like, I'm available. I'll be happy to hang out in the waiting room. And my counsel does know I was attending this evening, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Good night, Amita.
Do you put him in the waiting room,
I
Sue?
will put him in, yep, I'll put him in the waiting room. Here you go.
Good night.
Good night, Amita. Good night, Patty.